Stamkos up high. Yossi one-timer. Block behind the net. Nyquist tries to bat it off the Cord's back. He was wise to it. Got a piece of it with his pad. Puck below the goal line. O'Reilly trying to get out of traffic with it. Yossi can't keep it alive. Yanni going ahead on his left-handed backhand for the empty net. And he got it. 3-0 Kraken with 2:43 to go.
Yeah, that wasn't very good now, was it? Predators last night, it was a TNT game. I love a TNT game. A TNT game means that I get to watch it on YouTube TV. And still, they couldn't do anything. On YouTube TV last night, Predators lose. Shutout, fourth time this season. And boys, they are 2 points. And Chicago's got a game in hand away from last place. I'm just saying I'm just telling you what it is. You can agree, you can disagree, whatever it may be. So I want to start on the game last night, and I want to start on the road trip as a whole. This was the road trip where the Predators had to get it figured out. Again, you can say U.S. Thanksgiving, you can say the first 20 games, you can say whatever you want. At some point, we have to recognize that a fourth of the season is over. And through a fourth of the season, you are one of the worst, if not the worst team in the NHL. Now, I'm just going to say this right off the jump. I do not want to fire Andrew Burnett. But if you do, I get it. That's what I'll say. I don't want to fire the coach. I don't think they should fire the coach. I don't think they're going to fire the coach. I mean, I know they're not going to fire the coach because I asked the guy who's in charge of firing the coach, and he made it very clear he's not going to fire the coach. But the beginning of this Predator season has been completely unacceptable, and there is no valid reason for that. You know, sometimes guys get canned even with a valid excuse. Barry Trotz is an example. When he got fired here in 2014, or his contract wasn't renewed, Pekka Rinne played 24 games that year. How are you supposed to win without Pekka Rinne? But I see no changing when it comes to the Predators, and that's what's starting to scare me. The Predators win a game, and then once I watch them win a game like they did the other night at Vancouver, like I did when I watched them, and again, I don't want to give them credit for getting a point, but when they got a point the first 2 nights of the road trip, played a really good game to start the road trip in Colorado. A really good game. They got a point. But every time it's like, okay, now it's time to dig yourself out of the hole. They throw out a clunker like last night. They picked up 2 points on the first 2 games of the trip, which isn't great, but okay. They got blanked by Calgary. And I'm going to be honest. Friday night against Calgary was kind of the game where I said, hey, I'm worried this team might be toast. And then I saw Yossi's quote after the game Friday night where he said, we hope to win, we don't expect to win. And I said, that's not a good sign on a veteran team. And I hear the things like, well, Calgary played a good game or Seattle played a good game. But I got to be honest with you. I don't care if the other team plays a good game or not. You need 2 points. That's just the reality of the hole that you dug yourself in, the kind of team that we expected them to be, and the kind of team that they were last year. Granted, they got hot, midway through the season. Again, they beat Vancouver the other night. Good. Let's build off of it. 2 days off, short little road trip. I've taken a bus from Vancouver to Calgary, or from Vancouver to Seattle. Very easy. They probably took a plane, and they get blanked. And it just doesn't feel like there are any visible steps forward right now. Again, we're a quarter into the season, and this team that was supposed to be really, really good is, well, the second worst team in the league by 2 points. And once again, Chicago has a game in hand. Guys, this is the NHL. This is the sport where you fire the coach. And granted, the Predators have never been a quick trigger organization, and I'm okay with that. But Jim Montgomery just got fired by the Bruins, and he coached Boston to the greatest regular season ever 2 years ago. They won a playoff series last year. And he's out of a job because the Bruins are 2 games better than the Predators. And in Boston with the Bruins, that's not good enough. Jim Montgomery not only won a playoff series last year as coach of the Bruins, he won a playoff series against the Predators in 2019 as the coach of Dallas. The Predators haven't won a playoff series since 2018. So again, I know the reality. Barry Trotz spinning free agency to put a competitive team on the ice while he waited for the prospects. And some of the guys who are these prospect gurus, they say that the Predators prospects are mid-level prospects, not the elite guys. And when you don't pick number 1 or number 2, it's really hard to get the elite guys. But Barry likes the prospects they have, whether it's Mullendijk or Kimmel or Svechkov or some of those guys. So he wants them to develop, especially the guys in the low minors, like the Russian kid they took who's 18 years old. Let those guys cook, let them develop, let them play juniors, let them play in Milwaukee. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy some guys that will put a competitive team on the ice that, again, we can get behind and enjoy watching. I get it. But not competing was not on the table this year because this isn't a rebuild. So it's hard for me after the road trip, which this was the road trip where they needed to get right. It's hard for me to say that there's anything that I feel super positive about. Really, anything that I feel positive about in general. And yet I'm still not there on the coach. They haven't quit. They just can't score, which is a brunette problem. Trust me. And the one thing I seem to believe, and maybe I'm a dope, maybe I've gone soft, maybe I'm a homer, I don't know. The one thing I believe is that they've put all this work in to learn the system. And so if you put all this work in to learn the system and then you change the coach, I feel like you would set all that back. And so I don't think personally, I don't think they need to shake up the bench. But that's me. For the record, I didn't think they needed to shake up the bench in 2020 when they fired Peter Laviolette because I thought that Preds core with guys like Johansson and Ellis, and I thought that group had kind of gotten, what I said at the time, fat and happy. Those guys had gotten all these long-term contracts, and I didn't think their, don't want to say hearts, but I didn't think their focus was in it as much as it should have been. And I don't know what to make of this team's struggles. But I am going to accept that many of you do think the coach is the problem. And many of you would change the coach. And if the problem isn't the coach, then the problem is what? The age of the players that they brought in, which, again, if that's the problem with Marchessault and Stamkos, and there's really not a solution for that. You're just going to be bad. And in the NHL, again, I'm not talking about the Predators, but I'm kind of talking about how the rest of the league operates. In the NHL, being bad because, well, it's taken time for us, that usually doesn't fly. They usually change the coach. Hope for better, and then admit, okay, these guys we brought in aren't very good. But that's a different mentality than what the Nashville Predators have had over the years. And if you believe the mentality that everybody else has, Edmonton changed Chris Knobloch or changed to Chris Knobloch early in the year last year. Worked out for them. The Bruins are changing Jim Montgomery this early in the season. We'll see how it works out for them. If you believe it, I can't argue with you. If you call in today and you say you want to fire Andrew Burnett and you feel confident in that, again, I wouldn't do it. And I'm not suggesting they do it. I'm not expecting them to do it. Again, your general manager is a former coach of an organization that does not pull the trigger on a coaching firing as quickly as other teams around the league. So they're not going to do it. But again, if this is what you think this team needs, you're entitled to that opinion. And I want to clarify something. Andrew Burnett should be on the hot seat right now. Because the hot seat, Sometimes I think people hear hot seat and they think he should be fired today. And that's not what I'm saying. Because I've made that abundantly clear. I would not change the coach. I wouldn't. The hot seat doesn't mean fired, but it means you're starting to hit that red alert territory. Matt Eberflus of the Chicago Bears is on the hot seat. He's hitting the red alert territory. This was the road trip. This was where the Predators were to sequester themselves and get it right. And they got 4 points out of a possible 10. There's just nothing to say that's positive other than the penalty kill, the goaltending's been okay, the power play's coming along. I mean, there are like some things there, but to me, that's as hollow as the Titans' number one defense that we've been talking about. And at least they're showing 3 games on Channel 5 over the next month. But what we thought this team was going to be, and I thought it. I did. And I've pushed back when I don't believe the narrative that's come out of there the same way I pushed out against the Titans. When they said that year in 2022, 2023, with Niederreiter and McDonough, and they said, okay, now we think we can compete. I said, no, come on now. And they didn't. This year, when they went and got Stamkos and they went and got Marchessault, they went and got Brady Shea, I was very excited. I thought there was something to that. And yet, none of it to this point has come to fruition. And given the fact that, again, this is what they've built, these are the contracts they've doled out, there really aren't a lot of options. So what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to get it right. They're going to try to turn the corner. They're going to try to get their confidence. They're going to try to, I think Barry said, you can't just go out there and win 7 games in a row, although it'd be nice. You can't expect to do that. You got to take 2 out of 3 or 2 out of every 3 points or whatever it may be. But with games like last night, I keep thinking to myself, every time they take that 1 step forward, then comes the 1 step back. And the other teams across the league that you're playing, they try to. So they're not going to just roll over so that the Predators can get into the playoffs. So this was supposed to be the road trip. This was supposed to be the turnaround. This was supposed to be, and again, they didn't have to win every game, but they won 1. It's not good enough. So where I sit today, I'm not firing the coach. Again, I've said U.S. Thanksgiving. I would never fire a coach before U.S. Thanksgiving. And U.S. Thanksgiving is rapidly approaching. The Predators are not going to be anywhere near the playoffs, I would assume, unless they win 4 in a row. They are not going to be anywhere near the playoffs by U.S. Thanksgiving. They will look at this and say, we got to get back to work on Saturday night. And they're right. They're playing Winnipeg, who's incredible this year. They better get back to work. Because, again, if I owned this team, I wouldn't fire this coach. But I'd like to see them get a corner turned here at some point. And if I had to tell you if I was betting on them or betting against them, I would tell you I'm rooting for them and betting against. Because this team just doesn't seem to, they just haven't found that next level that they've got to get to because of the hole they dug themselves to start the season. So if you want to fire the coach, I understand. You have a very valid case in this sport with how this league treats it. I'm not there yet. I'm not ready to fire the coach. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in on that. Again, a disastrous loss last night for the Predators, given how important this road trip was. 615-737-1025. Now, there's what, again, I would do, and I'd say I wouldn't fire the coach. But there is what I know they will do. We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game. Let's talk about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They were at my home this week, and they did great work. Why? Because they always do great work. Hiller's Cash for the Holidays promotion is back, and they're giving away cash for the holidays with select purchases. So get $500 in a Visa gift card when you buy select new HVAC systems or a new whole home generator, or get a $250 Visa gift card when you buy a new tankless water heater. These deals are only available until the end of the year, so schedule today by visiting happyhiller.com. Take advantage of Hiller's $99 drain cleaning this month, too, and there's no better time to take care of your home before the holiday guests arrive. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds of Vols and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today.
The trip concludes now. Do you have a thought as you head home and what you'd like to see done differently there?
Well, I think it's kind of been the same old story a little bit. Just kind of being ourselves at certain times, and again, the margins when you're not scoring, they're not filling it right now. They're tiny, and we're losing the margin game a bit, and we don't really have enough mojo to overcome that. So it was all in all, you feel pretty good about the road trip. Obviously, to get something out of tonight, go back home and keep trying to build our game here.
Feel good about the road trip? I mean, what? Feel good about the road trip? You beat Vancouver. Colorado played your tushies off. Didn't win. Got a point. Edmonton. played a good game. Wedgwood was good. Got a point. Didn't win. Calgary didn't win. I mean, again, at some point, and I understand, Peter Laviolette used to say this all the time. I like the way we played. I hate the result. But when you start off the year 0-5, at some point, the result becomes the most important thing. But I'm going to tell you this right now. I am not ready to fire the coach. I view firing the coach on the radio, something that you know that I am willing to do. I view firing the coach as something that once you do it, you cannot go back. Now, I've never done it and regretted it, unless you want to count Vanderbilt's Derek Mason, and that was really more because I thought he was just a really, really nice guy. But if you want to go through it, like whether it's Jerry Stackhouse or whether it was Mike Vrabel or whatever it may be, I view these decisions, even on the radio, in pretend land, which is really what this is. I view these decisions as seriously as I feel like those who make them should. Because once you fire the coach, as many of you know, there is no going back. And so this is not like breaking up with your on-again, off-again significant other, Furcata, whatever. Like Jim Montgomery is not going to coach the Boston Bruins anytime soon. And I can tell you this with all certainty. Barry Trotz is not firing the coach. And I will tell you how I know that Barry Trotz is not firing the coach. He's come on this program and he has told us on multiple occasions he views Andrew Burnett as a solution and not part of the problem. And I'd like to think that Barry Trotz, while again, not blameless in all of this, he put this team together thinking that they would compete and he's the general manager. It's his team. But I would believe that Barry Trotz has a strong enough reputation with this city. Forget about the league. In this city, I believe that he would have a good enough reputation that when he says to us he's not changing the coach, we would look at that and say, okay, well, he means that. And there are going to be people that will say, you give the Predators latitude that you wouldn't give the Titans. And you do it, Jared, because Barry Trotz comes on the show. And I really would like to think that I am less biased than that. That, again, I can put the way I feel about these guys to the side. I think Burnett, going into the year, I thought Burnett was a great coach. Not a good coach, great coach. And I still think he's a good coach. And I still remember what they did last year. But I understand the results of the results. So I do think I can put that bias to the side. But Barry's told us he's not changing the coach. And I will give him credit for this. He faces the music every week. Same spot. And he knows as well as I do, these conversations are serious. He and I are not playing grab ass when he comes on the air. I like the guy. I think he's a good general manager. I think he's fair. I think he's honest. And he comes on the program and he does not say things like the puck didn't bounce our way. He does not hide from whatever the expectations were to what the result is now. In fact, he was the one that got out in front of it saying, hey, this is fantasy hockey, guys. The Titans, outside of Brian Callahan, whose level of culpability is certainly in question one way or the other, they're not accountable. They traded DeAndre Hopkins, and do we know what the updated vision for the football team is? So, again, I open the show saying this. I am not here to dissuade anybody. If you think, because the Boston Bruins fired Jim Montgomery, that you as a Predators fan are entitled to a coach firing, you're allowed to have that opinion. But what I will tell you is they're not going to fire the coach. And if nothing else, and maybe this doesn't matter to you, but it does matter to me. If nothing else, at least I appreciate that the Predators talk about it. At least I appreciate the fact that they don't run away from it. That, again, Barry faces the music every week. Trust me, it was a lot more fun last year when this team got hot and they were winning a bunch of games, and it was a lot of fun every week to say, Barry, you won 7 in a row. How's it feel? Of course it's more fun to do that. Just like it was more fun to talk about the team in the summer of 2017 than it is, say, today. But you do have to tip your cap to them because they will talk even when times are tough. And that does matter to me. So Barry Trotz has told us he's not changing the coach. And I'm just going to tell you, he's earned enough credibility, in my opinion, in this town to know that he's not faking it. When he says that he's on the road trip and he sees the guys interact with the coach and that he's been places where when a guy walks into the room, all of a sudden everybody goes quiet and their heads go down, and that's not happening here, I have to believe that he's telling us the truth as to what his evaluation is of this team. And I will give them credit for that. But it's a rough time right now. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. We will get to your phones at 615-737-1025. And there is one thing that I do not do when it comes to stuff like this. And I'm not going to do it now. We'll get to that next. 615-737-1025 here on the program. And I do not know if I'm going to the game Saturday or not. I am excited, though, because on Saturday, join the Predators for a special 6 o'clock puck drop as they welcome back to Smashville Hockey Hall of Famers David Poyle and Shea Weber. There will be a ceremonial puck drop ahead of the game, and our coverage begins at 5 o'clock on 102.5 The Game and on the Game Nashville app. And I will say this, if there is anything that could get this season going, and I'm not trying to gaslight anybody because I don't do that, but if there is anything that I would say could get this team, we could look back on it. To me, it would be beating Winnipeg at home on Saturday. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
How would you assess this one tonight for your group?
It's disappointing. Definitely there for us. We're not putting the puck in there right now. Myself not putting the puck in there right now. It's tough because our goaltending's great to give us a chance to win these games, and we aren't scoring. It's frustrating for everyone. We can't win games if they're not going to score, and there's some opportunities there that we have to generate more and find a way to put the puck in the net.
There goes Ryan O'Reilly. Again, the problem with the Predators is 5-on-5, they can't score. That's the problem. And the one thing I'm not going to do, because I have heard this from places, and I hear this a lot of the time, whether it is football, hockey, whatever sport. Blame the players, don't blame the coach. The problem is not the coach. He's not coaching them to not score. Blame the players. It's on Stamkos. It's on Marchessault. It's on Gus Nyquist. Blame the players. And you will never hear me do that. Now, you will hear me blame a player, but you will never hear me blame the players. And right now the problem is the players. Brady Shea, for instance, that is a player that I don't know what has happened to him, because the Brady Shea that I remember in the Carolina playoff series a couple years ago was a freaking stud. And now I get nervous every time the puck's on his stick. But I'm not going to blame the players. The blame, in my opinion, and I would think that they are accountable to this, but Trotz and Andrew Burnett, like that, again, it was either a roster collection issue or a coaching the talent that they've got on it issue. And so, again, for me, that's the coach's job. Like when I hear, he didn't coach him to allow that pass rusher to run by him, blame PT. I'm like, that's his job, is to coach that guy. And again, I heard Nick Saban say last week he had never coached a bad player to play good. The word should be well, but Saban said good. But he can coach good players to play better. These aren't bad players. Again, they may not be in their primes, but they're not bad players. And so we got to figure out what's going on here. But for me, I'm not going to sit here and say, blame the players. Players need to play better. Forsberg needs to play better. You bet you're right. He does. They all do. To me, that's coach. I'm not ready to fire him, but I'm not going to give him the cover of blame the players, don't blame the coach. 615-737-1025, and our phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. So there are a lot of people that have texted in. For instance, Chris in Lewisburg says, with all the similarities between the Preds and the Titans, what is with these similarities? Both teams spent big money to bring in stars, only to be terrible losers. Another texter says, the Predators and the Titans off seasons were very similar. They hired big-name free agents, and it didn't work out for either team so far. Why do we want Rand fired so bad, but we have no questions for Barry Trotz? First of all, we have questions for Barry Trotz. He comes on the show. We ask him. He answers them. But I would say the biggest difference between the Titans and the Predators, the Titans play some of these games, they don't even belong on the field with some of these teams. The Predators could beat Winnipeg. Now, again, hockey's a different sport, but they could beat Winnipeg on Saturday night. They just, for whatever reason, what was it, 4-0 against Utah at home? And then they get out on the road and they can't score? And I can't tell you what it is, but there's a difference there. Like with the Titans, I can tell you what it is. Titans didn't have a right tackle. That's the problem. With the Predators, I can say the second line center was going to be a question mark. But, I never looked at this roster and said, I'll tell you, they have a major deficiency here or a major deficiency there, and again, I don't think these are bad players. One texter says, 5-on-5, they are awful. Stamkos is invisible except on the power play. Shea stinks on defense. Marchessault skates miles while not being impactful. I have a hard time arguing that one. I with Stamkos, it's like, with his power play one-timer, it feels like he's kind of become the guy in baseball that hits like 212 with 43 bombs. And it's like, he'll come out there and he'll hit bombs but other than that, there's not a lot there 5-on-5. And they've tried every line combination. And if you want me to get after Burnett, I'll tell you the thing that really got me yesterday was the penalty to begin the game. I've never seen that before. I have never seen that penalty before, ever. And it's like, hey, man, like things aren't going well around here. And I know every time Adam brings up the coach, Willie gets super upset about it. Like Willie's like, it's not the coach. It's not. And, I'd say I know both guys well enough to know deep down inside, Willie hates that. Like, I'll just tell you, he hates talking about the coach. And I get it. But at the same time, when it comes to coaching, this start is unacceptable. This league punishes coaches for unacceptable starts. You have an unacceptable start. You're playing the last game of this road trip. The road trip has not gone as well as you would have liked. If they had picked up 2 points last night, though, you could sell that, hey, they won 2 in a row. They picked up points in 4 of the 5 games. Like, you could sell that there's a little something there. And you start the game with a penalty because you can't get the lineup right? That one pissed me off last night. If I was to point the finger at the coach and say, what the hell are you doing? It would have been on that one. But again, I'm not there. And you guys can text into the text line in the YouTube chat, and you can say as much as you want. Jared, you are so hypocritical. But the difference is when it comes to the Titans and the Preds is that last season happened. And last season, the Predators performed over their skis. And I remember at the trade deadline, I had written everything down on a piece of paper. I was very big. I had gone to Costco, and I had bought different color flare pins. Ian, I don't know, are you a flare pin guy?
Well, I've mentioned before, my wife is an elementary school teacher.
True. Do they allow flare pins in elementary school?
Well, for the teachers, they do.
Okay.
So, we got fun supplies. Yeah.
Okay. So I am a flare. I had bought a pack of flare pins at Costco. And so I had all these different colors. And at the trade deadline, I was kind of looking at, okay, who's on an expiring deal and who's coming up through the minors and who's kind of in the high minors versus the low minors and what picks they have. And they had everything at that point in time. They had a team that was good at the NHL level. They had cap space. They had picks, including 3 first-rounders at the time 2, now 3 first-rounders this year. They had prospects in the high minors, whether it was a guy like Joakim Kimmel at Milwaukee or Fedor Svechkov or Reed Schaefer or Yaroslav Askarov. They had guys, Spencer Stasny at the time. They had guys in the low minors, whether it's Matthew Wood, Tanner Mullendijk, etc. Like, they had every box checked. Right now, they still have those picks and they still have most of those prospects. What they're missing is the cap space. But again, they can get creative and they can work through some of that. They already created some by getting rid of Dante Fabro. So I'm not too worried about that. Like, at least I see a foundation where, hey, there are young pieces that can come in here and can be good. And they have the picks in the future to be able to do that. The Titans don't have any of that. One texter says, I don't know hockey like some of y'all, but man, Brady Shea absolutely needs to be benched ASAP. He's done absolutely nothing, and he looks lost out there. One thing I guess I'm a little torn on when it comes to Burnett. There's one thing Burnett's doing, and I know it pisses Adam Vingan off. And I want to get to it next because I see both sides of the argument. We'll do it in your phone. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
This is what I would like to see from Andrew Burnett in the next few games. I want to see him hold his top players accountable. I thought the example of Jonathan Marchessault's turnover that led to Connor McDavid's goal last night and him being able to continue on a regular shift when Michael McCarron made a similar mistake against the Oilers that led directly to a goal from Leon Draisaitl, and we did not see Michael McCarron again for the rest of that game. It can't be both.
You know as well as I do that the rules are different for star players.
But at this time, they should not be.
How it is.
At this time,
maybe
it should not be.
I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm saying that's the reality of sport.
That was Adam Vingan last Friday saying, I want to see Andrew Burnett hold the good players accountable. Now, for right now, let's use the word good in quotation marks because Stamkos hasn't played like a good player, and Marchessault hasn't played like a good player, and Brady Shea, holy crap, has not played like a good player. Let's just be real. And again, you guys know me. I love my hockey team. But right now, the good players are letting you down. The good players, for whatever reason, the coach has not gotten the good players to play well. Maybe they're too old. I don't know. I don't think Brady Shea is too old. And also, as much as we can sit there and say, see, Tampa didn't want Stamkos, and see, Vegas didn't want to go 5 years on Marchessault, they did want these guys back for this year. They didn't think that they would stink this year. They just didn't want to pay Stamkos $8 million for 4 years. And I think they wanted to do a 5-year deal or a 4-year deal with Marchessault, not a 5-year deal. And Brady Shea, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think Carolina just didn't have the money and they had all the nature stuff going on, whatever. But the thing that drives Adam Vingan up a wall, last night, Andrew Burnett scratched Luke Evangelista and he put Philip Tomasino back in the lineup. Whatever. I mean, I think Evangelista, like if you're going to be good, Evangelista is going to have to be a part of why you're good. But he scratched him last night. And again, Adam Vingan will use the Michael McCarron situation or, you know, a young player or a bottom of the roster guy, and they'll say, hold on, wait a minute. You can scratch Jeremy Lauzon and feel okay about it, but you won't scratch Brady Shea. You won't scratch Jonathan Marchessault after a big turnover in the Edmonton game. You need to hold those guys accountable. I see both sides of this. With Andrew Burnett, Barry Trotz has talked about this. You know, he compared with me last year. He came on the show and said, look, Andrew Burnett is going to scratch guys. It is the equivalent of how you guys know as well as I do. Ian, if your computer is not working, no matter what you do, what is the first thing that you try every time?
For my computer, reboot.
TV, not working. What do?
Yeah, maybe unplug, plug back in, something like that.
Unplug it, plug back in, baby. That's the number one. I don't understand it. One of you guys that went to MIT or Cal Poly will have to explain to me how the TV cannot work, the computer cannot work, and then I take the plug out, and all of a sudden I wait 3 seconds, I plug it back in.
Yeah, had to reset the modem the other day. Boom, working again.
But how? Like, did the circuits? I don't get it. But anywho, that's what Barry Trotz compared it to. He said, look, that's what we're going to do around here. And remember, Tyson Barrie got pissed off last year when he did it, and he wanted to trade, and Barry Trotz came on the show, and he was like, look, I scratched Ovechkin. So if you're going to get upset, Tyson Barrie, that you got scratched, like, I scratched Ovechkin. Shouldn't Andrew Burnett be doing that right now with the good players, quote unquote? Shouldn't Brady Shea? If anybody needs the plug taken out and plugged back in, isn't it Brady Shea? I got somebody here on the text line that says Brady Shea is Kyle Turris 2.0. Oh, God. Whew. I hope not. But I know what you mean. But the other side of the coin is this. If you want to win games, you need the good players in there to win. Now, I think if you're going to be good, you need Evangelista to play well in order to give you an opportunity. But I understand, Evangelista out for a night is not the same as Stamkos out for a night. But I do wonder if hitting the reset on one of these veteran guys might be the next card to play. The problem is if you lose the game because Adam Wilsby is in the game, people say, well, why have Wilsby in the game? He's a guy, he's from Milwaukee. What? And they'll be mad about that. And the other side of it is, Floyd told me this. I don't know if you guys remember this, but early in John Hines' tenure, I think pre-COVID, remember Laviolette got fired early January 2020. The world shut down early March 2020. So in that January to March period, there was a game on the road. I actually think it was a West Coast swing. And in the West Coast swing, John Hines benched Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene. And they said, okay, he's trying to get the best out of him. And Floyd looked at me and he said, you can do that once. You can do that one time. And then once you start doing it again, you're going to lose the player. So that's the other thing to keep in mind. He can take out Evangelista, put him back in. 3 weeks later, take out Evangelista, put him back in. He can't do that with Brady Shea. You take out Brady Shea one time. That's it. One texter says the plug in and plug out is not going to work for Tommy Novak. He is bringing the team down. Tommy Novak sucks. And I worried about it when they signed him to the contract, though I did not think that the contract was an albatross, and I still don't think it is. But I thought at the time, I'm like, I don't know if he's good enough for this. And they gave him a contract that basically said, yeah, we hope you're good, but we're not sure you're good. And it may be one that they got to get out of. They got to maybe attach a little sweetener, get somebody to take on Novak's money, and then go use that money on somebody else. Because I am not a Tommy Novak fan. He's just not big enough, tough enough, physical enough to be able to compete night in and night out in the NHL. And he's not skilled enough to offset any of that. One texter says, who writes out the lineup cards and hands them in? Is it the head coach or assistants? I did not even know that penalty existed. Did Ian, do you know if Burnett addressed that after the game last night?
Not that I heard.
About who's in charge of the lineup card?
I did not hear.
I can promise you that. Yes. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, I don't know how that happens. Like, maybe it was supposed to be 9 on the card and not 91, and someone read it wrong. Supposed to be Forsberg, not 91. Maybe there's some type of weird scribble and it got messed up. I have no idea.
Adam in Portland at 158 says, I wonder if Jared can get through a cold open without saying the words Brinker, Carthon, or right tackle. My money is on no, but who knows? Hate to say it, Adam. You lose. He also says, it doesn't make sense. If this were the Titans, you'd be begging them to fire everyone just like you do every single day for 4 hours a day. But since this guy comes on your show, it makes him somehow bulletproof and it discredits you. First of all, Barry Trotz comes on the show. Andrew Burnett does not come on the show. So when it comes to, well, this guy comes on your show, so you don't want to fire him. I'm talking about the coach. And I don't want to fire the coach. I think he's a good coach. And unlike Rand Carthon, Chad Brinker, and Brian Callahan, whose resume says, trust me, bro, Andrew Burnett is a Jack Adams finalist and has won a President's Trophy. And Barry Trotz has a Stanley Cup as a coach, and last year put that thing together, and that team was far exceeded its weight. There is a difference. Let's go to Rich, who's up next on the Preds. Rich, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, good afternoon. So here's a Preds situation coming from a source much more knowledgeable than all of us put together. If folks want to know what the issue is with the Preds, listen to the Elliott Friedman podcast today. I agree. He was very diplomatic in pointing out some issues. It's not do not fire the coach because he is a good coach, but the coach is trying to fit square peg with some of these players, and there needs to be adjustment mindset there. Some sources that Elliott Friedman did not mention, but have been telling him, and give you one good example, they have never seen Brady Shea play this bad. He is a good player. What is going on? And this is now across the board with and out of the lineup, it's probably time to move on and see what a couple of guys on Milwaukee can offer because their expiration dates have passed.
Yep, thanks for the call, Rich. I mean, Barry has kind of said that with Fedor Svechkov, that he'll be up here, and I think he's going to play your second line center when he gets up here. Now, that being said, here's the thing on the Burnett system. The Florida Panthers won a President's Trophy playing with it. The New Jersey Devils were red hot playing with it. And then last year, after Burnett left, they weren't very good. Now, goaltending was their big problem, and once it clicked for you last year, you caught fire. So I understand, like, hey, these players don't fit the system, so change the system. But when the system works, it's very good. So again, I see both sides of this argument. 615-737-1025. I heard Brian Callahan say something yesterday that I lifted my head up and I said, oh, no, he did not. And the reason why he, in fact, did, I think is pretty obvious. We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So I got to call Brian Callahan out. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing that Brian Callahan did. And I'm not saying it's not something I would have done if I was Brian Callahan. But it is something that I heard yesterday that I thought to myself, bull crap. And so it was during his press conference, TD asked a question about Levis's development and getting back on track, etc. And the way Callahan answered this question, I mean, it stopped me in my tracks. Here's the question and answer from TD to Callahan.
I'm sure like the trajectory is not where you imagine it would be. So what can he do personally, performance-wise, to get back on track to where you probably imagined he would be at this point?
You know, I don't know that I had any preconceived notions about where he would or wouldn't be. I was just hoping that he would get better every time he went out and would be able to operate the offense and get us in position to score points. And obviously plenty of room for improvement. I think we are improving, but we'd just like to see, again, those moments where we can convert a third down in the red zone, not stall out. And again, some of those are self-inflicted with the penalties, but just finding ways to be better when the field condenses. That's where I think we can do a better job, and Will can help that process as well. As when you get down there and it gets tighter, we have to find ways to make those plays and make those throws and score more touchdowns, because ultimately that's Will's job, is to lead our offense down the field, and we need to score points. And right now I haven't scored enough, and we got to keep hammering away at it.
Good answer by Brian Callahan. Ian, how long was that? Probably about a minute, 8 seconds.
Yeah, minute 3, including the question.
Okay, let's play the first 15 seconds.
I'm sure like the trajectory is not where you imagine it would be. So what can he do personally, performance-wise, to get back on track to where you probably imagined he would be at this point?
You know, I don't know that I had any preconceived notions about where he would or wouldn't be.
Stop. Okay. I was just hoping he could run the offense and go from there, and bull crap. That is not, again, TD asked a very fair question, right? Which is, coming into the year, there are high expectations. What can you do to get him on track and the development that coming into the year you were hoping that Levis would be at? No problem with that question, because it's true. I mean, it's a fair question asked by TD. Callahan's like, well, I'm not sure I had any preconceived notions about where Will Levis would be. I just, wanted him to be able to call the plays and get out of the huddle and run the offense. Really? Because this was Callahan, I believe in May, if I'm not mistaken. This was Callahan on Bussin' with the Boys when talking about how excited he was.
I feel like there's some really exciting pieces that, if we can put it all together, I think we have a chance. And obviously I believe in Will Levis. It's a large reason why I took the job, is that I think he's capable of being a really good player. And he has not disappointed so far in the offseason program. He's fantastic. Does everything you ask the way you want it. And I'm excited to see what we have. I'll leave it at that. I think we can put together a competitive football team.
That's a big reason why I took the job, was because of Will Levis. And he is everything you could ask for. You mean when he sat down with Amy and he interviewed for the job, after Amy had already put out a video in which she was asked what the fans should be excited about, and she said, we've got a good young quarterback. You mean to tell me that he didn't lay out, hey, here's how we're going to develop this young quarterback? Of course he did. Of course he did. And now it's, well, I had no preconceived notions. I was just, trying to figure out if he can get us in and out of the huddle. It's the equivalent of, dude, I just work here. But you don't. And so I'm not saying I would have done anything differently. I just got to call it how I see it. And here's why Brian Callahan's doing it. Because he's distancing himself from Will Levis. Again, what happened to Will Levis is a big reason that I took this job. It should be noted that Brian Callahan was set to go to Carolina the next day before he got offered the Titans job. Not sure there's a big reason for anything other than the money and the position that you would want the Panthers head coaching job. So again, what's happening, in my opinion, is that Brian Callahan is distancing himself off Levis so that at the end of the year, he can either sell Amy or Amy can sell you on that wasn't his guy. After, again, he got the job. I'm telling you, he got the job by telling Amy, that's my guy. I can fix him. I know. And so here's what we're going to do. We're going to come in here and we're going to evaluate in the offseason exactly where he is. And we're going to work on his mechanics. And we're going to get him locked in here. And then we're going to get him there. And we're going to. You mean to tell me he walked in there and was like, I don't know if your quarterback's any good. We'll see. I don't think so. So again, I'm not saying Brian Callahan is wrong to do what he did. In fact, Brian Callahan could have just ignored that entire part of TD's question and talked about how, well, what we've really got to do is we've got to get better and score more points and get down in the red zone and finish off drives and blah, blah, blah. He could have said that. Instead of I had no preconceived notions coming into the year about where he should be. Really? I don't buy that. So again, I think this is a distancing themselves kind of thing. And so for everybody out there that has seen the improvement in Will Levis through the last 2 weeks and has said, oh, they're going to keep Levis around and I will tell you that Brian Callahan's actions, or I should say his words yesterday, are leaving open the reality right now that I don't think that's what they're doing. But I do think that it is probably the right play if you're Brian Callahan to say like, oh, no, I didn't have any preconceived notions. I just got here. I didn't know him. I was just hoping that he could run the offense, I saw a talented quarterback on tape, but we got to get that all figured out. What happened in the offseason program? He's everything you want. You see the difference? So I do love that. And so, again, I'm not saying that Brian Callahan's wrong for saying what he's saying. Again, probably would have said this. If I was in Brian Callahan's position, probably would have said the same thing. Probably would have told Amy, I can coach him. And I'd probably be telling everybody now, like, hey, man, I just got here. I didn't know. But I got to call it out when I see it. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. Get your thoughts on that, 615-737-1025. Plus, speaking of Levis, here is the reality of the future of the Titans and the quarterback. We'll do it next. Stillman & Company, 1025 The Game. What progress has stood out to you from jumping back into the lineup over the last couple of weeks for you personally, just how you've seen the field or operated, and what's still the next step you're trying to achieve?
Haven't thrown the ball underhand or just past it, so that was an improvement. No, I mean, going back and watching the film, even of the first few weeks, I feel like decision-making standpoint, how I was seeing things was definitely a little bit better these past couple of weeks, but it wasn't like a crazy difference. But I just think the consistency of it all brought the picture together a lot more. So being able to do the things on a more sustained basis, which still isn't up to our standard, and if we're able to have a passing performance like we did and still come up short of what we know we're capable of, then we know that the sky's the limit.
There you go. That was Will Levis talking about, hey, this is what he's seen. This is what he's kind of, now that he's back in the lineup, here are the things that he's kind of, I haven't rolled the ball in the ground to the other team. I haven't pissed the game away, which he did early in the season. You know what's crazy? And I know Jack Gibbons got his leg completely shattered the other day, so, we're thinking about you, Jack Gibbons. But I do wonder if Jack Gibbons didn't get that pump blocked in the Chicago game, I do wonder how different everything would be. If Gibbons doesn't get the pump blocked in the Chicago game, he was up at the podium. I went when Rand did that whole ball didn't bounce our way thing. I went to the press conference because I asked Callahan, do you actually believe that? But I was waiting for Callahan. Gibbons was up there, and I walked in while Gibbons was talking, and I turned to TD after Gibbons got done, and I said to TD, I go, you know what I really wanted to ask? I really wanted to ask Jack Gibbons, Jack, how does it feel that if you didn't get that pump blocked against Chicago Bears, this entire season might be different? But again, can't change it. Is what it is. So I do want to talk about Will Levis because I think there's a lot of conversation about the growth we've seen with Levis over the last 2 weeks. He has been much more impressive. And it is funny to me that I felt like the only one who was really banging the drum on Will Levis's improvement against the Chargers, saying, I actually saw some good against the Chargers. They should be making a big deal about this. He was good. He didn't turn a ball over. He didn't. And I was told, no, Jared. They got beat. He wasn't good. You're gaslighting people. That's not fair. Now that he has a second week where he doesn't completely poop his pants, it's like, hey, the last 2 weeks have been pretty good. But I think there are Titan fans that have some serious anxiety about whether or not Levis is going to be the quarterback next year. And I'm here to tell you right now, he won't be. I'm telling you right now, Will Levis will not be the quarterback of the Tennessee Titans, the starting quarterback, and I don't even think he'll be on the team in 2025. Should I do it, Ian?
Yes.
Dun, 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 dun. I guarantee Will Levis will not be on the 2025 Tennessee Titans. I guarantee it. And I'm going to tell you why. Minus him going 7 of his last 8, a la Vince Young as a rookie, he will not be here. Because with the current regime, Carthon, Brinker, Callahan, in order for them to keep their jobs, they would have to sell the fans on something different, right? Like they cannot get up there at the podium after the season and say, we're going to run it back with Will Levis, and this year we're going to try harder. You've got to have something to sell the fans on. And again, cap space isn't going to work this year because that's what they did last year. And then if this current administration, Carthon, Callahan, and Brinker, if they're not back, I highly doubt that a new coach and a new GM would want to tie themselves or their records down with anything Will Levis related. And I think about teams around the league. Think about the Washington Commanders. Sam Howell did not have a horrendous season last year, but Adam Peters showed up in Washington, and it was like, Sam Howell, nice to know you, good to see you, go to Washington, goodbye. Seattle, see ya. 4th round pick, we're going with Jaden Daniels. The end. Atlanta did exactly what you did last year with Desmond Ridder. Atlanta had Desmond Ridder, and it got Arthur Smith fired. And I think Arthur Smith is a good coach. And if the Steelers keep performing well with Russell Wilson at quarterback, I think there's a chance Arthur's going to be head coach sooner rather than later. But Arthur Smith got the boot in large part because of Desmond Ridder. Well, it's not like Desmond Ridder can't play football. Desmond Ridder's on the Raiders. He's a backup. But it's not like Atlanta, Raheem Morris got there. It's not like Atlanta was saying, well, hey, Desmond Ridder could be our quarterback. Let's see what we can do. No. There was one guy to pay. They paid him. They were on the board at 8. They took the quarterback. Atlanta went out of their way to make sure that Desmond Ridder never happens again. So if it's the current regime, there's no way Levis comes back because, again, they have to sell you on something different. If it's a new regime, there's no way Levis comes back because they don't want to tie themselves to anything Will Levis related. And if you don't think that fans are going to say, well, hold on, we want results. We want to see progress early. And again, I'm not saying make the playoffs in year one. I'm not saying go to the Super Bowl, but fans are going to want to see progress. Ask Brian Callahan if everybody gets a mulligan. Because right now, according to the CBS broadcast, he's having to talk to his kids about what the other kids at school are saying. So Levis is out there and he is getting better. I will not fight that. I will not dispute that. I mean, I was the one again, the Charger game that I was like, hey, he's getting better, guys. This is a good step in the right direction. Like, this is what we want to see for the last 2 games. Good. But as far as it having any tangible effect, I've seen some people say, ESPN has a mock draft that's out today, Matt Miller. Ian, I looked at it. I cannot get into talking about the mock drafts yet.
No, it's too early.
I can't do it. But they have the Titans picking, I believe, 4th, and both quarterbacks are off the board, and the Titans take the wide receiver out of Missouri. And it's like, well, if the quarterbacks are off the board, maybe the Titans can take the receiver out of Missouri and run it back with a better team around Will Levis. And in Will Levis's defense, I do think it would be more fair that he get to play behind a team that actually has a right tackle. But he's not coming back because they have got to sell you on something and maybe even sell the owner on something. And so whoever's out there in free agency, whichever quarterback, Darnold, whoever, that will be an attractive option compared to Levis. Sanders or Ward might get pushed up the board because it's a better option than Levis. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. One texter says, why wouldn't the Titans keep him as a backup? He is on a rookie salary. So, again, Sam Howell, Desmond Ridder, those guys were on rookie salaries. Kenny Pickett was on a rookie salary. Justin Fields was on a rookie salary. And yet, none of those guys were kept by their clubs last year. Matt Jones was on a rookie salary, etc.
Do you think he'll get traded or cut? Traded.
I mean, think about all those guys. Pickett got traded.
He got traded, yeah. Fields
got traded.
Yeah.
Zach Wilson got traded.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, isn't Zach Wilson the crappiest, bum of the group? And even he got traded.
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know who's the worst out of that group, but
Sam Howell got traded. Malik, albeit not at the end of the year, but Malik got traded.
Yeah.
So if Malik can get traded, given the state where he was at that point in time, Levis can get traded. The reason why is because whoever the next quarterback is, if Levis is on the team, there's going to be, let me ask you guys this. If Mason Rudolph wasn't the backup quarterback, but Ryan Tannehill was, if the Titans had gone to Ryan Tannehill and it said, hey, 1 year, $13 million, you're the backup to Levis, we're going to sign you, and we are going to announce to the world, you are the backup quarterback, Will is the starter, and if something happens to Will, you'll play, but we're not benching Will for you because we're trying to figure out what we have in him, but we want to be protected at backup. How long would it have taken before the fans started begging for Ryan Tannehill back? And this is a fan base that last year said, good riddance when it came to switching Ryan Tannehill for Will Levis. That's what teams in the league do. The reason the Chicago Bears didn't want Fields behind Williams is because with Caleb's struggles, there would be chatter about, why not try Justin Fields? Justin was better last year. And NFL teams do not want that. So what you do when you have a young quarterback, just like you did with Mason Rudolph, is you find the Scarbiniest backup to go sign so that your fan base and your coach do not get the urge to beg for the other guy. The only other option would be this in terms of, if you have a young quarterback and you don't want there to be a controversy, but you get a guy, like let's say you draft Shedeur Sanders. Let's say you draft Quinn Ewers. I could not imagine how Titan fans would feel if the Titans decided to take the receiver or a tackle in the first round and then use a second rounder on Quinn Ewers. And I have no idea where Ewers ranks anymore or whatever. But let's use Quinn Ewers as the example. Let's say you take Quinn Ewers in the second round, it's kind of similarly to Levis, and you say Quinn Ewers is our guy. So Quinn Ewers is going to be the quarterback of the Titans. If you bring in, say, Jake Browning to be the backup quarterback, a veteran who knows the offense, who might start over the other guy just for a little bit, you can do that. But if not, it's got to be the Scarbiniest backup. Like Mariota behind Jaden Daniels. Like Matt Castle behind Mariota. That's what you do in the league. And so that's why I don't think Levis will be a backup here. He'll be a backup somewhere else. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. So we've talked a lot about the front office and what they're going to do. And are they going to come back? And do they deserve to come back? And what do we? And Robbie Stanley said something today that I think a lot of people are thinking. And it's the kind of thing that other organizations probably don't worry about. But for some reason, people here kind of do. And I'm here to tell you, I'm not sure I would worry about it. We'll get to that coming up next. Join me, Chris Sanders, and D. Mace live at Twin Peaks in Madison this Sunday for the award-winning pregame show from 9:30 to 11:30. We'll break down the Titans and the Texans, and the award-winning pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment, Sundeck Nashville, Sloan's Motorcycle ATV, and award-winning Blue Note Juke Joint and Blue Note Crossroads Bourbon. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Be sure to tune into 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville this Saturday for MTSU football. The Blue Raiders will take on New Mexico State. Kickoff at 1:30, pregame at noon. MTSU football coverage on 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville, presented by Sloan's Motorcycle ATV. And our college football game of the week is at 11 o'clock right here on 102.5 The Game, Indiana, Ohio State, where Ohio State will wax Indiana, presented by Twin Peaks. Take your tailgate to Twin Peaks, home of 29-degree drafts and wall-to-wall sports. So we've done a lot of talk about what the future of the Titans in terms of their hierarchy is going to be. We have talked about, the GM. We've talked about the coach. We've talked about Chad Brinker and whatever the hell it is he does and what they need to do in order to get better and et cetera. And a blowout this week against the Texans would not be a good thing. But Robbie Stanley today brought up a counterpoint on Robbie and Joe about the idea that the Titans may bring everybody back, and his number one reason why, and it's not a reason that a lot of people haven't said.
If I had to lean what they're actually going to do, my answer would be that Rand Carthon, Chad Brinker, Brian Callahan are all back next season, and that's for a multitude of reasons. But there's one reason that I was thinking about yesterday that I think just viewing this ownership, viewing the way that this franchise operates, makes me almost convinced that they're coming back next year. And it really has nothing to do with what we've seen on the field. It's simply this, Joe. Right now, she's paying John Robinson to not be the general manager of her football team. And she's paying Mike Vrabel to not be the head coach of her football team. Do we really think that she's going to do that with those two and then turn around and also pay either Brian Callahan, Rand Carthon, or both to not be the general managers and head coaches of their football team while she's already paying Mike Vrabel and John Robinson to not be involved with their football team? I don't know. That just seems like a lot of people to be paying and then going out and hire another general manager on top of it to then be throwing all that money that way.
Okay. Ian, has that thought crossed your mind too, that, hey, maybe Amy Adams Strunk might be too cheap to fire Rand Carthon, Chad Brinker, Brian Callahan while she's already paying Mike Vrabel and John Robinson?
Here and there.
I mean, I think it's crossed a lot of people's minds. I don't think that's an issue. Number one, Vrabel will be a head coach. In fact, Vrabel may be a head coach tomorrow, but Vrabel will be a head coach next year. And when Vrabel becomes a head coach, she's not paying him anymore. Robinson, I believe they are on the hook for 2 more seasons. Well, that's already a sunk cost. But when it comes to Carthon, and it comes to Brinker, and it comes to Callahan and the money they make, I think that's kind of negligible in terms of the NFL. Again, I understand people will say that money comes from different pots. But at the end of the day, the way it works in the NFL is the owner writes the checks. There is a salary floor. Everybody hits it. There is a salary cap, but that is fake. If you want to spend $1 gazillion like the Saints do, like the Browns do, you can spend $1 gazillion. If you want to be cheap, like Jerry Jones, you can be cheap. But at the end of the day, Amy Adams Strunk pays these players way more than she pays these coaches. Way more than she pays the general manager. So if you mean to tell me that they can spend $25 million on L'Jarius Sneed, but they can't pay $3 million a year for the next 3 years to pay off Rand Carthon, I'm not sure that math really adds up. I mean, right now they're paying L'Jarius Sneed $1.47 million a week to sit his ass on the bench. For those counting at home, by the way, L'Jarius Sneed this week, which he's already been ruled out for, will rack up $8.8 million in wasted money. Way to go, Chad Brinker's AI InjuryDetection.com model. Way to go, Chad. $8.8 million. So they've already wasted $8.8 million on L'Jarius Sneed. Now, there's some question marks as to whether or not L'Jarius Sneed's contract's insured and whether or not they could claim the insurance money on that, but we'll never know the answer to that unless they choose to tell us because that's private information. But again, they're paying Andre Dillard $3 million real dollars, not fake cap dollars, but they're paying Andre Dillard $3 million real dollars not to be on this football team. So you mean to tell me Amy Adams Strunk is fine with paying Andre Dillard $3 million not to be here anymore, but the idea of paying the general manager who gave her such hits as Andre Dillard at left tackle and Peter Skoronski with the 11th overall pick and believe in Will Levis and Snead and Awuzie and the president of football operations who called her sweet when trying to talk about his new promotion. You mean to tell me she can't spend $3 million on them? But she can spend it on L'Jarius Sneed for every 2 weeks he chooses not to play? Again, people will argue, well, there's a players fund and that money is funded differently than the coach. It all comes from the owner. So if the payroll in the NFL for an average NFL team is about $275 million, $260 million, somewhere around there, which I think you come in under that, but you're 26th, I think, according to the websites. You're 26th in the league in cash spent. If you're telling me that there's going to be money here and there that you spend on a guy and then you cut the guy and it just, hey, it didn't work out, and that's $3 million down the drain. Jamal Adams. That's like, what, $1.25 million, just right down the toilet, 20 snaps. If you can spend that money, you can spend $3 million to pay Rand Carthon. So I don't necessarily have a problem with this, or I'm not sure I necessarily believe that Amy won't spend the money to fire guys that she thinks she needs to fire. Again, if Amy were that cheap, if it was, they're not going to pay these guys not to coach, why did she fire Ken Wisenhunt 2 years into a 5-year deal? Why did she fire Mike Malarkey when they owed him another year? Why did she fire John Robinson, not even a full season, into a 5-year contract? Why did she fire Mike Vrabel 2 years into a 5-year contract? At one point, she was paying 3 head coaches. So her track record indicates that's exactly what she will do. Either you've got a quick trigger or you're cheap. Well, I mean, I think I've been following this pretty closely. It is kind of my job. Amy's got a quick trigger, folks. Not saying that's a bad thing, but again, that's kind of the reputation. When we think of the cheap teams, the Bengals are a good example of this. They may keep Zach Taylor as coach. They missed the playoffs last year and they got Joe Burrow hurt. And this year they've got a healthy Joe Burrow, and he and Jamar Chase are lighting it up. They're going to have to give Jamar Chase 30-something million. Their leading sacker is not happy and wants a new contract, and he is the league's leading sacker. And yet, with the generational quarterback, a generational wide receiver, and the league's leading sacker, they're going to miss the playoffs. But that's not how the Bengals do business. The Bengals are probably not going to fire Zach Taylor. That's the Marvin Lewis way. But that's not what we do around here. When it comes to Amy, she fires people. Not, well, she doesn't want to pay. No. Again, I think she looks at it as if, hey, when it comes to L'Jarius Sneed's $8.8 million in wasted money, how's that any different than saying, well, let's fire everybody and it'll cost $5 million this year. And if they don't get jobs, it'll cost $5 million next year. And on we go. 615-737-1025. Speaking of Titans and coaches and contracts and fired, and there was a doozy. We got some former Titan coach stuff to get into. There was a doozy that was making the rounds today. And I got to say, God bless them. We'll get to that next. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number on the program. 615-737-1025. This week's Nashville's best deal is Bavarian Beer House, Nashville's only authentic German beer hall, a place full of fun, food, music, and most importantly, beer. Enjoy traditional German beer, brats, giant pretzels, and more in their expansive beer hall and garden. Head to thegamenational.com/deals now to get a $50 gift card for only $25 to Bavarian Beer House while supplies last. Be giving away a pair of Jelly Roll tickets later in the show, so be listening for your opportunity to win that. Ian, did you watch any of the CMA Awards last night?
No, can't say I did.
Oh, man. I watched the CMA Awards last night.
How'd it go?
We have no sacred cows on the program.
Sure.
The CMA Awards might be a sacred cow. Just made my life a little easier if I will say this. I did not hesitate at 9 o'clock to go downstairs and watch Predators. I'll just tell you that right now.
There you go.
Join or be sure to tune in for Vandy. That's right. Be sure to tune into 102.5 The Game tonight for Vandy basketball. Commodores take on Nevada in the Shriners Children's Charleston Classic. Tip-off 6:30. Pre-game 6. Coverage also available on the 102.5 The Game app and at thegamenashville.com. And then Vandy football is this Saturday presented by Prince's Hot Chicken on 94.9 The Fan. Love Prince's. The Commodores take on LSU pregame at 5, kickoff at 6:45. So we're going to be doing some talking here in a second about these former Titan coaches, and we're going to start with one today. There is I guess it's a radio show, podcast, I don't know, making the rounds of Mike Malarkey. So if you remember Mike Malarkey, and I would love to know what Mike Malarkey thinks of the Titans now, but Mike Malarkey took over as interim head coach from Ken Wisenhunt, and this team was just in utter disarray. It was as bad as it is now, maybe even worse. And he took over as interim coach and kind of gave everybody the good college pep talk, and I think won the respect of a lot of people around here. And yet the fans, when he got hired, hated it. 18-34 as a coach. He sucks. But Amy was comfortable, so they made him coach. And immediately, with John Robinson's players and his old pawpaws coaching them, they went from the worst team in the league, picking number 1 overall, to 9-7 and on the doorsteps of the playoffs. The next year they went 9-7 and they made the playoffs. And they went to Kansas City and they won a playoff game. And the whole time hovering over, as the story goes, you all know this, as the story goes, hovering over him the whole time was this idea that if they lost to Jacksonville the last week of the year, he would have been fired. If they lost to Kansas City in the playoff games, he would have been in the playoff game, he would have been fired. And Amy released a statement on Sunday after they beat the Chiefs on Saturday that said, just to clear everything up, Mike Malarkey will be our head coach going forward, with the implication that Mike Malarkey was coming back. In fact, I remember Sean McDonough and John Gruden called the game. This is how long ago this was. Sean McDonough and John Gruden called the playoff game where they beat Kansas City. And Sean McDonough said when the Titans got the first down to ice the game, he said, take Mike Malarkey's name off the hot seat. And yet, on Monday morning, Twitter said the Titans and Mike Malarkey decided to part ways. But that's not before. Ian Rappaport, NFL Network, super connected. He knows everything. Had a report that Mike Malarkey was going to be getting a contract extension. Now, I've heard Kaharski tell this story, but it's so much funnier coming from Malarkey. This was Mike Malarkey on, I don't even know what the podcast was, but this was Mike Malarkey talking about his experience at the end in Tennessee.
The best thing I did there at the end, which I can now talk about, was when I got called in that Monday morning after the New England game, I knew they were going to fire me. So Sunday night, I called Ian Rappaport and I said, hey, I don't know if you know this, but I'm going to break it to you. But I'm getting a new contract in the morning. And he reported that it was all over the country. I was getting a contract in the morning, knowing that I was going to get fired. But I just wanted to see the faces on the owner and the GM who was out to get me. And I'm pretty sure I got him for a minute or two.
That's amazing.
That is awesome.
When I walked in the next morning, there wasn't a whole lot of conversation. It was like, you're done.
God bless that man. And again, I think that now's the time. When Mike Malarkey got fired, I will never forget the two firings that I just could not believe were the Mike Malarkey firing and the Peter Laviolette firing. And in both cases, it was because I'm like, these guys are good coaches. And they were good just now. In the case of Malarkey, like, this team was the worst team in the league for a decade, and he gets you to the playoffs and wins a playoff game, and you fire him? I mean, again, right now, we're talking about a 2-8 team. And we're like, I don't think it's fair to fire the GM in his second year, but it was fair to fire Mike Malarkey? And now, when you put it into that context, it's like, yeah, it probably wasn't all that fair. But the fans were like, Fire him. We don't want to run the ball. We want to throw the ball. Then Matt LaFleur realized the only way they could move the ball is by running it with Derrick Henry, and then everybody seemed to love it. Actually asked Malarkey about it one time. Malarkey said to me, yeah, funny how that works. And I love the fact that, again, Mike Malarkey knows he's getting fired. And for all intents and purposes, his career's over. Because I know he spent a couple of years as the tight ends coach in Atlanta after that, but his career, you don't get 4 chances to be a head coach in the NFL. This is not Major League Baseball. So his career's over. He knows it. And he still just wants to stick his middle finger right to the GM and the owner. And Malarkey was right. Robinson was out to get him. And I think that kind of ego, and it is pervasive. 32 clubs, GM, coach, everything. I believe that that's a big problem in the NFL. And I would love to know what it would have looked like. Joe wrote a story in The Athletic. It was probably one of the best things Joe's ever done about Derrick Henry. And I thought it was great that in it, Terry Robisky, of all people, Terry Robisky said, if we had returned as coaches, we think we would have won the Super Bowl in 2018. Again, there's no way to disprove that. And not necessarily sure that they would have beaten Tom Brady and the Patriots, but again, make of that what you will. I do think it's funny. And I do think it's creative. And I do think it's a way. It's another one of those Titans getting played. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. Thought that was pretty funny. Coming up next on the program, speaking of former Titans coaches, there is a rumor that I've heard that I just right now, right here, I just, there may be no legs to this rumor. 0. But I'm getting out in front of this rumor and saying right now, no way, no how, no possibility should this ever be allowed to even be thought of. We'll do it next. Someone to Company 102.5 again. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios here on the program. Live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. I think I just said that. That's okay. But there is a rumor that I heard, and I don't even know how responsible it is for me to bring this rumor from the rumor sphere into the mainstream. Ian, would you say this is a little irresponsible with what I'm about to do?
I don't know about that.
I don't know if it's irresponsible, or I don't know if I'm looking out for the franchise. I don't know if this is all just a game of telephone. I don't know if this is all just a bunch of nothing. But I want to get out ahead and throw the stop sign up at third base and get the city on my side so that this does not happen. Yesterday, I texted somebody who's got more sourcing over at St. Thomas Sports Park than I do. And I said to them, I go, here's what I think's going to happen. And I've said this many times. I think Carthon gets fired at the end of the year. I think Brinker takes over and Callahan stays as head coach. And their response to me was, Jeff Fisher making the rounds with leaks about him vying for Rand's job is just so great. I said, wait a minute, hold on. Hold on, what? Jeff Fisher is angling for Rand's job? So I don't know, but I got a bunch of texts yesterday about Fisher replacing Rand Carthon rumors. LOL. And we do know that last week, Jeff Fisher was on the Chase and Big Joe show, and Chase asked Jeff Fisher about returning to the Titans. Here's what Jeff Fisher said.
Your name comes up quite a bit of people will suggest, should Jeff Fisher be an advisor? Should Amy Adams-Strunk bring Jeff Fisher in to fix the Titans, to run the team? So I think I know the answer, but I am going to ask you, if that phone call ever came or has come, is that something at this point in your career you would be interested in?
Well, I would never rule out anything. I'm enjoying what I'm doing right now, and that includes some things I haven't been able to do over the last 20 or 30 years, the grandkids, and especially enjoying Nashville and the people that I interact with every day. But if they want some help, they know they got my number. But I believe that, they've got a good group put together now. These are tough times, especially as you're staring, the prospects of a new stadium and the future, right between the eyes. But I'm open to anything.
Okay. I have no idea if it was just what he said on Chase and Big Joe. And again, I do have a problem with the question of Chase saying, a lot of people are talking about they should bring Jeff Fisher back. Who? But again, I don't know if it was just the game of telephone that Jeff Fisher said, they got my phone number, but I'm good. Whatever happens, happens. Or if Jeff Fisher is actually behind the scenes trying to get in there and maybe pull the Barry Trotz. I have no idea. I'm just going to tell you right now, I am using my platform for what I think is good for this city. And that is to stop this right here and right now. If I get a vote on this, and I should, Jeff Fisher is an absolute non-starter to run the Tennessee Titans. An absolute non-starter. And I know how these things work. Well, the owner tried by having the NFL help her out last time. She landed on Rand Carthon. That was a disaster. She doesn't really have a big built-up Rolodex of football people, considering that she's fired most of them. So it's like, who does she ask? She doesn't know. She just go to Jeff Fisher. Can't go to Floyd Reese. He's dead. Got to go to Jeff Fisher. Don't do that. That is unacceptable. And I think if they did that, they ought to refund every PSL to any fan who's bought them. Again, I have no idea if there's actually angling going on here. But I am here. We have a very popular program. The ratings of this program have never been higher. And we have got to use our platform for good. Jeff Fisher has been out of the league for 8 years. 8 years. Jeff Fisher's done a lot of TV watching, and all he would do if they brought him in to be the GM, which he's kind of did in St. Louis, but it would be to rekindle your old Titan fuzzies. Oh, it makes us feel good again to have Jeff Fisher back. But you do not want that because he stinks. Again, he's been out of the game for 8 years. The game's changed. But more importantly, 8 years ago, he stunk. When he ran the Rams, he was terrible. 35-41-1. Didn't make the playoffs one time. And the second that Sean McVay showed up, the franchise did a 180. And now people want to put Jeff Fisher back in there? No. Give me a break. And again, I have no idea if Jeff Fisher is up for the job or not. And I have no idea if I'm starting a rumor that might be irresponsible saying that, hey, Jeff Fisher, maybe he's angling for the mix. Maybe he's not angling for I don't know. Maybe this is a problem. People are going to hear this. They're going to go to work tomorrow. They're going to say, did you hear Jeff Fisher might be the next GM? Maybe I'm making it worse. I don't know. But I am telling you, if I get a vote, Jeff Fisher returning to the Titans in any capacity other than Walmart greeter, autograph signer, Jumbotron waiver is an absolute no-no. You just can't do it. And if you would ask me today, what is the likelihood, Jared, that she fires Ran Carthon? 60-40? What is the likelihood that she completely cleans house? I don't know, 35, 30, 70, 25, 75, something like that. What are the odds Jeff Fisher returns to the Titans as general manager? 0.5% is what I would have told you. But that 0.5% of Jeff Fisher, of the possibility that Jeff Fisher could be running the Tennessee Titans again, is enough for me to spend this segment telling you that that is absolutely preposterous and it is unacceptable and this will not stand. Like I have said this, if the Titans draft Carson back to play quarterback, and I will say, if they bring Jeff Fisher back to run the team, if they bring Jeff Fisher back in any capacity that involves him being in the office every day, having any sort of authority or anything other than, we like having Jeff around, that when we get the team reunion going, we like to take pictures and have a barbecue and we want Jeff there, then I will renounce my Titans fandom. And you should too. So I'm just saying that. I don't know how real these rumors are or aren't, and I don't care. I am making it known right now that this is absolutely, positively not an option. I'd rather do another year of the ball not bouncing their way than having Jeff Fisher make crap up. Although the ball not bouncing your way is kind of making crap up too, but still. Plus, if that is true, if that rumor is true, and I have no idea, and it did not sound, again, from that Chase and Joe interview, it did not sound like Jeff Fisher was angling for Rand's job, but you know how rumors work. If that is in fact true, that is some dirty business because Rand Carthon started, or actually was in Atlanta, and then he went to the Rams. He worked for Jeff Fisher. But with Jeff Fisher, when it comes to stabbing people in the back, you never know. It's been very well documented. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. And just this Jeff Fisher talk, I had to go back in the archives. I had to. We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
Well, I don't think he was ever really into talent. I mean, he wanted to have say, and he wanted to have an idea of the people that we were going to draft. But as far as, going to the combine, as far as going to pro days, as far as doing all of that kind of stuff, he wasn't really into it all that much, and which ended up being fine for us. So, I spent the majority of my time doing that kind of stuff, and he wanted to spend the majority of his time doing football stuff, which was fine with me.
Who made the call to draft Steve McNair? You or Jeff?
I did.
Okay, who made the call to draft Eddie George?
I did.
Javon Curse.
But I mean, that was all just because that was at that point in time. Javon, I did.
The old days of the Jared of the GM program. Again, I heard a rumor that there's rumor about, Jeff Fisher coming in and being GM, and I am no, unacceptable. Even if it's just a rumor, I just want everybody, no disrespect to Jeff, but I just want everybody to know right now that's not acceptable. And every time I think of Jeff Fisher, I think of this headline. This is turfshowtimes.com. I believe this is the SB Nation site of the LA Rams. Former Titans GM Floyd Reese on Jeff Fisher. No thoughts. This was after Jeff Fisher's Rams got crushed on Monday Night Football. They got beat by Chip Kelly and the 49ers. This is how far back this goes. But this was an oldie but a goodie. On Nashville's 102.5 The Game radio station, Jared Stillman and Floyd Reese have a talk show called Jared of the GM. After the Rams' lovely showing on Monday Night Football, they turned their attention to a familiar face, Jeff Fisher. As you'd expect, it was ugly. Reese worked with Fisher from 94 to 2006 as the Titans general manager, among other titles, so it wasn't as blatant as you might be hoping for, but it's pretty easy to read between the lines. They then play the cut that we just played, or they write out the one about how Fisher didn't go to pro days and things like that. Quote, I can't exactly begin to process this. Let that sink in. Jeff Fisher's GM for 12 years casually lets out that Fisher never even seemed to enjoy talent evaluation. When you think about it and the choices he's made on offense, a facet of the game he has no experience in, it makes sense. Jeff Fisher on realizing QB potential. Now, I look at how Jeff Fisher, this is me. I look at how Jeff Fisher screwed up with Sam Bradford, and then he trades for Nick Foles to be his franchise quarterback and cuts him a year later, and now he drafts Jared Goff, and he can't play. I'm saying it's not Vince Young. It's you. Your thoughts. The GM's response. No thoughts. We've got to read in between the lines here, they write. But since we are certified Coach Speak fans, we might not think this is about as negative as you can get without pulling an old coaching buddy on blast. Still, the adage is, if you don't have anything positive to say, don't say it. And it speaks volumes when coming from a former NFL GM. It speaks even more when said former NFL GM was the guy picking players with Jeff Fisher. In the NFL, the truest form of value a team can have is its win-loss column. For Jeff Fisher, the third most losing coach in NFL history, his true value does not seem to conform with reality. If ignorance is bliss, maybe no thoughts are a good thing. Says this. I have got to tell you, I think this is by far one of the funniest. Again, it all comes back because there's rumor out there that Jeff Fisher is going to come back to save the Titans. That's how Looney Tune the current scenario is. But I do think it is hilarious to me that we go back 8 years and it's like, yeah, no thoughts. And what was funny was kind of at the time, Floyd had said, like, hey, we can do whatever we want to do on the air. Don't get me in trouble with football people. Again, he didn't say it, but he said it. Don't get me in trouble with the football people. And I would say that that's not putting words into his mouth. He kind of made that abundantly clear.
Probably,
I feel
fair.
like.
Yeah.
So I saw that this website article went up there about him slamming Jeff Fisher. And I called Ryan Porth and I said, Porth, I had nothing to do with this. I did not give this to a LA reporter to write this story or anything like that. I said, but it's out in LA, so I'm sure he didn't see it. So we'll just pretend like. And he comes up to me and goes, my son sent me an article that they wrote in LA, And I was like, no. No. I can't with that for whatever it's worth. So, again, I would just say no on Jeff Fisher. And then he can go back to doing what he's doing. What did he say he was doing with Chase? He's enjoying the grandkids. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Ellie is up next. Ellie, thank you for calling. Thank you for waiting. Go ahead.
Yeah, can't we do like a smart thing, like go to the Detroit Lions? I thought I would never say that in my life, and get one of their head scouts or one of the integral parts of their draft. I mean, they picked Amon St. Brown over Des Fitzpatrick, and look at their draft: Penei Sewell, Terry and Arnold, on and on and on. They traded the quarterback and got more picks. I mean, we're going to need to trade our first-round pick and hopefully get many, many more picks events. We need someone who knows what they're doing, who knows what to get talent, and get some people in the foundation. And the Detroit Lions have done it right. Let's get someone from them and see if they could do something right with our team. Thank you.
Okay, so here would be my response to that. I don't want a new guy. I want an old guy. I just don't want the old guy that they had 12 years ago or however long ago it was Fisher was here. I've said Thomas Dimitrov, Rick Spielman, Mark Dominic, Ian, who else is out there that's any good? The former guys that we like. Doug Whaley-ish, but I'm not a huge, I can go either way on Doug Whaley.
No, it's a good question. I'm not sure.
Give me one of those guys. The guy I'd like the most is Spielman. That's the guy who I think really knows ball is Rick Spielman. And that would be the guy. I don't want some guy that's, an advanced scout coming in to be GM. No.
Joe Douglas.
That's the way the game trends. No, I don't want Joe Douglas. And I will say this, Joe Douglas did draft well. And everybody
they do have
fails
some
with the
good
Jets.
players. They have some good young players there.
I mean, everybody fails with the Jets. It's like, we look at Sam Darnold and say, well, the Jets suck. Can we not look at Joe Douglas and say, oh, well, the Jets suck? It's a fair point. But I'm not interested in the New York people for whatever that's worth. Adam in Portland, man, he hates when we get on Jeff Fisher. So we got a ton of texts on Jeff Fisher. Here's my question, Ian. I'm going to let you make the call.
Okay.
Do we go to the phones on Jeff Fisher? Or do we stay on the grid? And we do have the old Sally Reese tapes. Because I will tell you right now, if Jeff Fisher gets named Titans general manager, Sally Reese will be on the Stillman and Company program for at least 1 hour, maybe longer, if that happens.
Let's hope for the listeners that happens.
Should we play one of the cuts from the Sally Reese tapes?
Probably.
We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, we are reacting to the rumor I heard yesterday, which again is the smallest legged rumor I have ever gone to the air with. No idea if it's true or not, but I'm just making sure we're all on the same page ahead of time. The idea that Jeff Fisher is trying to get back in as general manager. And if Jeff Fisher's not trying to get back in as general manager, then I apologize. But again, the sentiment still stands. I don't want Jeff Fisher to be the GM of the Titans, period. So I did promise the Sally Reese tapes. This was years and years and years ago. In fact, I was actually telling somebody about this yesterday. There's still an ESPN.com story up. And the ESPN.com story has the headline of Sally Reese rips Titans on local radio. The wife of former Titans general manager Floyd Reese called a Nashville radio station Thursday to blast the team and Jeff Fisher a day after hearing talk that her husband has hated the coach since losing a power struggle in Tennessee. This is October of 2009. After the 59-0 game in New England, God bless you, Sally. She picked up the phone and she dialed in to set the record straight. And here's one of the many points of contention that Sally pointed out.
Yesterday, it sounded like Jeff and Floyd were butting heads. And granted, when you work with somebody as many years as you work with them, I'm sure you do butt heads. And what I also hear is that he didn't get a say-so on the players drafted. Well, I got a real good one. Floyd had Devin Hester on the phone. He was going to the Titans, and Jeff wanted Lindale White. So Floyd backed it up, and you guys got Lindale, and Chicago Bears got. And that would have been the fourth rookie of the year my husband had. Not too shabby.
Okay. So, I mean, do we really want Jeff Fisher back running the Titans? By the way, that was in 2009. It should be noted Devin Hester is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and he was on the phone to be a Titan, but Jeff Fisher had to have Lindale White. Is that what you people want? I also love the fact that the origin of that call goes all the way back to the Patriots were going to London. Sally waited until the plane was in the air, called up George Plaster's radio show, blasted Jeff Fisher. When the flight landed, Stacey James, the PR guy for the Patriots, goes up to Floyd. And he's like, hey, man, like, you know, this happened. Your wife called in. Apparently, and I've been told this story by like 8 different people, Sean Reese, Floyd's son, has basically berated Sally about, like, you know, Belichick doesn't like anybody talking, and Bill's going to get mad at Dad, and I can't believe. And so Floyd said he looked at Stacey James, and he said, well, I mean, what do you want me to do? It's my wife. And it's like, I mean, you know. So Floyd picked up the phone, and he called Sally, and Sally was in tears, and she was all apologetic. And he goes, does it make you feel better? She said, yeah. He said, good. And that was the end of it. All right, some of your Jeff Fisher text, 615-737-1025. Well, now I've heard it from 2 people about the rumors about Jeff Fisher. So we're stopping it right now. Jeff Fisher is no when it comes to Fisher running the organization or really being anything more than just a guy who signs autographs at the pro shop. Skyler says Jeff Fisher's the greatest 8-8 head coach of all time. That's not true. He was 8-8 with Floyd Reese's players. When he was with the Rams, he was 10 games under 500. No, 8-8. Jonathan in East Nashville. I'd rather the Titans engage John Robinson instead. Adam in East Nashville says, Fisher is Nashville and Titans to the core. It would give me reason to renew my PSLs I've had for 22 years. Nostalgia and losing is better than just losing. I don't know about you guys, but when Jeff Fisher broke up with the Titans, I mean, I had respect for Jeff Fisher at the time. Now I really don't have as much. But when Jeff Fisher broke up with the Titans, I had the mentality, I was a junior in college, and I had the mentality of Salute Jeff Fisher. You were a good coach, but it was time for you to go. And it's time for somebody good to come in here. Now, I'm like, they fired the wrong guy. And I just wonder if Floyd had Nick Saban as the coach, which is what he said he would have done. If he had fired Jeff Fisher after the 2004 season or 2005 season to hire Nick Saban, what would have been? With Floyd picking the players, Saban picked the players in Miami. With Floyd picking the players for Saban, what could have been? Jordan says, Jared, I agree. Having Jeff Fisher back would 99% most likely result in a further / total collapse of the team. But I have to say that the entertainment value it would bring the show every day because of how bad it would be, which is why it would bring me to an unparalleled level of humor. That being said, what are your thoughts on him being a consultant? No! And I know people think that like tire fires are good for the radio show. And to a certain extent, they probably are. But I don't want to live. I have a son on the way in December. And I know I used to joke and say like, no, we'll let our son root for the Packers or we'll let him root for the Steelers. We don't want him to root for the Titans because dad and grandpa have been through too much. But if they bring Jeff Fisher in here, like, I may not be able to do that to my son. Ian, Adam in Portland's mad.
Well, you keep all this Jeff Fisher bashing, he's going to get mad.
Adam in Portland freaking loves Jeff Fisher.
Hey, it's the glory days, man. The glory days. Love the glory days.
Adam, you know who's responsible for the glory days. By the way, I didn't even think about this. You know, when Kaharski was doing his whole, hey, Jeff Floyd Reese didn't draft any good receivers. Yeah, he might have had a right tackle, but he didn't draft any good receivers. And like his tweet said something like, yeah, they protected the quarterback, but none of the guys that's throwing the ball to were any good. I'm like, the quarterback won MVP. So he must have been thrown to somebody. Regardless. Adam in Portland says, I can't begin to tell you how much I hate you bagging on Jeff Fisher. He did a lot for this town. What's the difference between him coming back to BGM versus Barry Trotz coming back? Jeff made it further with the Titans than Barry did with the Predators. And don't say Barry won a cup. Ovechkin won a cup for Barry. Don't get me started on this. Your daily contradictory is wild. You speak as though you think you know more about football than Jeff Fisher, and it's hilarious. Your friend knew more about football, but you don't. Jeff could coach laps around you, and I think you would GM like a pro. Again, you are biased. Again, I don't think I know more about ball than Jeff Fisher. I don't. But I know Floyd doesn't think Jeff Fisher knows ball, and that's enough for me. Sorry. Like, again, he didn't like it. He didn't this, he didn't. I mean, I hate to say it, but like, again, we played the audio. I'm just saying this. I heard a rumor, and I just want us all on the same page. And the same page is no. By the way, to the Barry Trotz thing, can I just say this? Barry Trotz earned a promotion to BGM. Like, he had coached long enough. He'd won a cup. He'd been successful everywhere he'd been. He, again, it's to give him a shot. Jeff Fisher has run the Rams before. You remember Sam Bradford? Nick Foles with the Rams? Remember Eric Dickerson? Not when Eric Dickerson was good, but when Eric Dickerson got into it with Jeff Fisher. And Snoop Dogg was mad about it. We've seen that 8 years ago. 10 games under 500. I'm just saying, I just, again, if it's a possibility, if it's out there, I just want to say no. And I will deal with Ran Carthon for another year, who I don't want back, but I'll do it. I'll do it if it means no Jeff Fisher is GM. We can't have Jeff Fisher as GM. 615-737-105. Speaking of Jeff Fisher, there is something about yesteryear that is kind of bothering me. And Gentry Estes put this in a column. And I've thought this for some time. But after the Viking takeover on Sunday, I actually think now is a time for me to address it and not get labeled as the biggest hater out there. We'll do it next. Stillman Company, 102.5 The Game.
Not your primary concern, of course, but did it bother you and the players at all to see so much purple in the crowd yesterday?
My experience with those things is that when you play well and you win games, people come, and that's for us to have our Titans fans at the stadium and supporting us. You have to give them something worth supporting, and right now we have to do a better job of that. You got to win more games to see people support. I've played in this stadium before, and it's been a pretty raucous environment. It's been a hard place to play, and we got to do our part to make sure that our fans want to come, and that's all part of it. That's how it is for every team in the league. You put a product out there that people want to watch, they tend to come watch it, and our record and what we've done so far probably isn't what people expected or wanted, nor is it what we were hoping for. And so those are usually what happens in those types of games against fan bases that travel well, and that's a good fan base. Minnesota's a fun place to. They got a good team. They're excited about them, and this is a fun city to come visit. And so that's all part of it. It's a great city. It's a great place. I know when I was in Cincinnati, the Bengals fans all look forward to coming down here too. It's just part of what makes Nashville a great place, and we just got to keep putting our team together and put ourselves in position to win games, and those things will work themselves out.
Okay, there you go. That was Brian Callahan on the Viking fan takeover over the weekend. Gentry Estes wrote a column today in the Tennessean. And I'll tell you, Gentry's actually getting pretty good with his columns.
Okay, good.
Gentry's a bright guy. Gentry wrote a column basically about the Vikings fans taking over the stadium. And he said, quote, "The circumstances of a popular city and of an NFL franchise histories have often explained a lack of home field advantage for the Titans. That has happened plenty of times before, and it'll happen again. But Sunday's loss? Nah. The reasons behind that one were largely self-inflicted, and the Titans know it." So Gentry's not doing this whole, well, Nashville's a good place to visit, and the Vikings are a great fan base. And he said, no. This was bad. But there's another thing in Gentry's column that I read, and this, you know those moments where I have like a get off my lawn kind of mentality? Where I kind of turn into an old curmudgeon even though I'm only 35. I'm entering middle age, but sometimes I masquerade as a 75-year-old. It was this nugget in Gentry's column that kind of brings out something that's actually annoyed me since training camp. Quote, "The Titans can wear Houston Oilers gear and helmets, and that's great. But they aren't the Oilers. They chose to become the Titans. And the Titans simply aren't established enough to build a generational widespread following that many franchises enjoy across the NFL." And where I'm going to take this is I see far too much Oilers gear from the coaching staff. From some of the players, like underneath they got Oilers stuff in the locker room and Oilers hats, and they need to save that for Oilers week. Twice a year, they wear the Oilers logos. They welcome back Warren Moon. They paint it in the end zones, and I'm fine with that. The Houston Texans are not the Oilers. They should never get to wear the uniforms. They should never have anything to do with that franchise, and that's fine. You in Section 217, you want to buy an Oilers jersey? Knock yourself out. They'll sell anything at the gift shop. That's fine. Oilers hats, Oilers hoodies, Oilers shirts, Oilers. But Brian Callahan had a press conference on Monday, and he was wearing an Oilers hat. And not even thinking about this, it bothered me because I'm like, dude, you ain't the Oilers. You're the Titans. And then on Oiler Week, you can be the Oilers. And everybody should wear Oilers hats and Oilers, beanies and everything else on Oilers Week. But there is an element here of building a brand. And clearly the Titans brand is not very good. It needs to be more. I once asked the GM, I said, what's crazy is when you were GM, it was kind of all basic. They used to wear the navy jerseys with the white pants. Then on the road, they'd wear the white jerseys with the navy pants. Unless it was hot outside, then they would wear white on white, if the sun was shining or whatever. But it wasn't until 5 or 6 years into it when they started wearing navy on navy and navy on light blue and light blue on navy and white on navy and light blue and started mixing around the pants and the jerseys. And I asked him one time, I said, why is that? And he said, well, when I was GM, I felt like with a new team in a new city, we had to establish a brand. So I wanted everybody to see the same thing every time. And I have a soft spot every time the Titans roll out with navy on white or white on navy, because that's the way it should be. And again, I know I'm going to get labeled a hater because everybody loves the Oiler gear. And look, I'm cool with it. When I see the Oiler stuff, I think about the old Tennessee Oilers. And I remember how back then, I said this to Blaine Bishop one time. I said, this was like last year when they kind of unveiled the Oiler uniforms. And I said to Blaine, I go, what's funny is that everybody's buying up Oiler hats and Oiler shirts and Oiler. And I said, when you guys were the Tennessee Oilers, everybody was like, well, we're waiting until they're the Titans and then we're going to buy our gear. And I just think it's funny. But my big point here is save that for Oilers week. When you guys wear the Oilers stuff on Oilers, I have no problem wearing it against the Houston Texans, because I know it pisses them off. Now, when they bring a JV team out here and they beat you in them, it's kind of embarrassing. But I'm fine. But I don't need, like in the facility, Titans. No knockoff stuff. Now, the players, again, players going to wear whatever players want. But I'm talking about the coaching staff, the support staff. If I own the team, the saying would be, for 50 weeks out of the year, we wear Titans stuff in the facility. Titans polos, Titans quarter zips, Titans hats, Titans hoodies, Titans beanies. And 2 weeks a year, we wear Oilers. That's all I ask. And again, I think Gentry brings up a good point when he's like, let's realize who we are right now. And again, Gentry, I'm not saying we, but I'm talking about the mentality the Titans should have. One texter says the white on white Titans uniforms look like toilet paper. Disagree. I kind of like the white on white. Do you know what I actually miss? That at first it didn't bother me, but the more over time, the more I'm like, I miss the white helmets. I don't know about you guys. Maybe I'm just a hater, but I miss the white helmets. Man, some of you guys are haters in here and not even haters with me. 615-737-1025 coming up next on the program. Because we've been talking about a lot of former Titans coaches. We talk about Malarkey and Jeff Fisher. Well, there is another former Titans coach who, according to a report, is on the verge of being an NFL head coach. Maybe tomorrow. We'll do it next. Stillman & Company, 1025 The Game. Okay, who watched the CMA Awards last night and who saw Jelly Roll? And by the way, shout out to Jelly Roll. He has lost some weight. Way to go, Jelly Roll. And Jelly Roll was fabulous, and he'll be at Bridgestone Arena on Tuesday, November 26th. And I think we should give away some tickets. So be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025, and you'll win a pair of tickets to see the 100-pound-less Jelly Roll. That's right, at Bridgestone Arena on Tuesday, November 26th. Contest supplied by Chiba Hut Subs, serving up dank food and chill vibes. Now open in Donaldson. That's Jelly Roll at Bridgestone Arena, presented by Chiba Hut Subs in Donaldson from 1025 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. By the way, it is a Thursday. TD not here for the TD Power Hour. As TD posted over the weekend, his mother passed away. He is attending to the memorial service, and I would assume spending time with his family. And I cannot say to you guys how much it hurts me that TD's going through that. And so we'll be keeping TD in our thoughts, but he will not be joining us this week for the Power Hour, which is one of the most popular hours every single week. And I just hope that the following that TD's built, TD's mother's a huge football fan. And I just hope that the following TD's built and the respect he has, I hope he knows, because there's no doubt in my mind that his mother must have been very, very proud of the career that TD's had. So no TD today, but that's why. Thursday night football, Browns and Steelers, kind of a stinky one, right? And we've kind of gotten used to good Thursday night football. We had the Commanders and the Eagles. We had the Ravens and the Bengals, good quarterbacks and good teams and some playoff implications or whatever. And now we get the stinky Browns and the somehow good Steelers. And while that is absolutely not a sexy matchup, apparently a Browns loss could be very entertaining. According to Tony Grossi in Cleveland, Tony Grossi, who Floyd said was the guy in Cleveland, very dialed in, has been there forever, kind of like a John McClain in Houston. According to Tony Grossi, quote, on Twitter, "Methinks Browns nearing a decision on Mike Vrabel. Pittsburgh game will be huge for Kevin Stefanski. Life isn't fair." Translation, if they lose to the Steelers, Tony's not saying it, but he's saying it. He thinks Stefanski could be out tomorrow and Mike Vrabel could be in. Now let's go back to June or May or whenever it was when Mike Vrabel was hired by the Browns, and I said, I think he's the coach in waiting over there. I think he's the backup plan with Kevin Stefanski. That if things don't go our way, Vrabel, get in there. And the Browns gave Stefanski a contract extension, and people were like, you said Vrabel was going to take his job. I'm like, you guys think Jimmy Haslam giving a coach a contract extension means anything? Mike Vrabel was not brought to Cleveland on accident. And again, Jimmy Haslam has a reputation for changing the coach. It is actually amazing. The Browns have, with Deshaun Watson at quarterback, actually had some stability with the head coach in the front office, which we're not used to. But that's only going to last so long. And so this is perfect. It makes sense why the Browns would do this. Again, it's not fair to Kevin Stefanski that he's going to get fired because they're 2-7, but Deshaun Watson was the quarterback, and there was no real backup plan with Deshaun. They made it to the playoffs without Deshaun. There was no real backup plan as far as Deshaun was concerned. And so if you're the Browns, it's probably, there is a good argument to make to keep Stefanski, who is a 2-time coach of the year. But this is the NFL. And the NFL is not fair. Life is not fair, and the NFL is not fair. So if you're the Browns, this actually might not be a terrible decision. Because when you compare your job with the other jobs that are out there, it's probably not that attractive. And Vrabel's going to have some picks now. Other than location, where we all know Vrabel is from Ohio, and payroll, where we know Jimmy Haslam spends on the team, there is probably nothing about the Cleveland Browns that would attract Mike Vrabel to be the coach. The quarterback position is the single worst QB situation I think I have ever seen. Because they still owe Deshaun for 2 more years. Nobody's going to trade for the contract. If you cut the contract, you're paying out $50 million a year for the guy not to play for you. It's bad. The veterans on defense they have that have been very, very good, Denzel Ward, Myles Garrett, they're aging out of their primes. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, again, aging out of primes. Grant Delpit, aging out of primes. Aging out of primes, aging out of rookie contracts. And then what star players do they have on offense? Jerry Jeudy's no good. They traded Amari Cooper. Nick Chubb, I don't think has ever been the same since he got hurt. Obviously, we know the quarterback situation is an unmitigated disaster. The left tackle has been benched because he decided to sit out until he was 100% because he's a pending free agent. They don't have any stars on offense. So other than location, because Vrabel's from Ohio, what good is there? And if you get the Browns job, not only do you have the single worst quarterback situation maybe ever, but you have to play Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson twice a year. So if a coach has options, they'll probably look elsewhere before they'll look at the Browns, simply because I don't even see a path to victory if you go to the Cleveland Browns. And you've got the owner, and you got the analytics bros upstairs that love to do things by the numbers. It's not a sexy job. New Orleans is probably sexier, albeit not by much. Jacksonville, where there's Trevor Lawrence, absolutely sexier, even though Trevor may not be very good. What's good about Cleveland? But if the Browns do promote Mike Vrabel, they get a first-hand look at Vrabel on the job. And they probably get the opportunity to retain Vrabel because, again, after the season's over, they can do their Rooney Rule interviews and then give the job to Mike Vrabel 5 minutes after the season's over. And if you're Vrabel, bird in the hand, you got a coaching job, or do you want to risk it for some of these other jobs? Cincinnati could come open, Philly could come open, Dallas could come open, whatever. But again, do you risk it if you've got the bird in the hand being the coach of the Cleveland Browns? So it actually makes sense, even though I wouldn't do that. But it makes sense. If you're kind of out on Stefanski, even though he has won Coach of the Year, and I don't think you can pin the fact that this Browns team is terrible given the contract that the quarterback has and the trade that the owner made in order to get the quarterback, I don't think that you can blame Stefanski. But again, this is the NFL. And in the NFL, owners just decide, yeah. And one of the big things when it comes to a head coach is, well, if I fire him, who am I going to replace? Well, they got the guy on staff. And he is going to be a hot commodity. Look, I'm not going to read too much into the Diana report because it came from Diana, and we know how in cahoots Diana and Vrabel are. But I do think that there is something to, again, not 100%, that Vrabel will have his choice of any job. But there are teams that want Vrabel. There will be 8 jobs that open at least, and one of those teams, probably 3 of those teams, are going to want Mike Vrabel. So if you're Cleveland, you get a first-hand look at Vrabel's coaching. If you already know that you're not in for Stefanski, what harm does it do? So if that's the case, if Tony's right, he's covered the Browns forever. If he's right and Mike Vrabel gets the job tomorrow if they lose, Ian, are we rooting for the Steelers today?
I don't know. It's a good question.
I mean,
just to see what happens.
Vrabel back in coaching? I mean, this has been such a disappointing season anyways. It's like,
give us something to talk about.
Yeah. And then, again, I don't know. Like, if Vrabel becomes the interim coach, does Vrabel have to stay if they want him? Or could Vrabel say, like, nah, I'm interim coach the rest of the year, but Cincinnati just came open. They have Joe Burrow. I'm taking that job. And I don't know the answer to that either. So, again, tonight, Steelers-Browns, stinky game, but Vrabel might return to the NFL, and I'm here for that. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number if you want to weigh in, 615-737-1025 here on our program. Plus, how would we feel if Vrabel actually coached the Browns? Because I do have a thought on that. We'll get to it next. Stillman & Company, 1025 The Game.
My worst case scenario is they get rid of him and we go to this coaching search crap. Like the Adams don't have time to do that, Tone.
That's why Vrabel is hovering over this thing. It's either Stefanski or Vrabel, in my opinion.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, to be honest, I would be okay with either. I think Stefanski would get a bum deal if he doesn't come back, but replacing him with Vrabel would help, heal that wound, right? It would be a very popular move, I would imagine, and it would be logical, but I'm not advocating it.
That was Tony Grossi again. He's covered the Browns forever. I love the first guy in that where he's like, I don't want any of this coaching search crap. Like that's how the league works. You fire your coach, you interview candidates, and then you decide who the best person to bring back is. I think that's pretty simple, right? So that's their business. But again, the talk is Vrabel. And I was thinking about this morning. And I don't know does Vrabel take the job simply because it's one of 32 and because, he took your job because it was one of 32. Takes it because it's one of 32 and it's his hometown. Does he take the job because of that? I don't know. But as far as I'm concerned, if the Steelers lose and Vrabel gets the job tomorrow, then go Browns. And I'll tell you why. I do not want Mike Vrabel coaching the Browns next year. There are going to be however many jobs open. The Jets are already open. The Saints are already open. Cleveland probably, if this is true, is going to come open. Who else is coming open, Ian? Jacksonville's coming open.
Yep.
The Raiders are coming open. That's 5. I'm trying to think, what other teams are out there that are going to come open. There's probably going to be about 8 openings. So here's why I'd hate Mike Vrabel to the Browns. Number one, the Browns are currently not on the Titans 2025 schedule. If Vrabel gets a job somewhere else, I want them playing the Titans next year, preferably in Nashville. The Browns are going to finish in last place in that division, but there is no guarantee that the Titans will finish in last place in the AFC South because the aforementioned Jacksonville Jaguars are equally as terrible. So you have to edge out Jacksonville for last place, and then you'll get Vrabel next year, but that game will be on the road, and I want Vrabel at home. I want fans turn your attention to the Jumbotron, and please welcome Mike Vrabel. And I do wonder what the crowd reaction would be. So I'd much rather have Jacksonville. Mike goes to Jacksonville. You're guaranteed to play him twice a year. And boy, wouldn't that be spicy. And boy, wouldn't we find out if Trevor Lawrence is actually good. And boy, wouldn't we find out if Vrabel could actually coach. Or Indy. Steichen, he might be on the hot seat. I think he should be. But throw Indianapolis in the mix there. Number 2, I don't want Vrabel coaching the Cleveland Browns because it's not a large market. And I want to see Mike Vrabel coach the Dallas Cowboys, the Philadelphia Eagles, or even the New York Jets, where they've got a media that shows up every day with a rocket up their tush, trying to catch you in every which way, where every single passive-aggressive shot that Mike Vrabel takes. And the thing I learned about Vrabel over the years from covering Vrabel, sometimes I was the center of this. Most times I wasn't. But the thing about Vrabel is when it comes to taking a crack at somebody, I don't know how you guys are with your own lives. I certainly am this way sometimes on the radio, and I have to end up apologizing for it. But there are some times where there's just an opportunity to say something that maybe I know I shouldn't say, but I can't help myself. And I say it, and then I got to pull back. Like I am like, yeah, I shouldn't have said that. I couldn't have. Here's the deal. When it comes to Mike Vrabel, he can't help himself. He cannot help himself from sticking his foot in his mouth to be an a-hole. And if you do that in Dallas, and you do that in New York, and you do that in Philly, one of two things is happening. Either you'll run them over the same way you ran everybody over here, or you will get run out of town and exposed for being a fraud. I want that. I want to see Vrabel in the big city. And then finally, here's the other reason why I don't want Vrabel to be the coach in Cleveland. The Browns stink. They have no shot at being good next year. And if Vrabel takes that job and becomes the head coach of the Browns next season, he has a built-in excuse for why they're going to be awful. Because that Deshaun Watson contract is a complete and total albatross, and I don't know why anybody would take that job with that contract on their hands other than, hey, it's a head coaching job in the NFL. Isn't that how the Texans ended up with Lovie Smith? Somebody had to take the job. So, again, if Vrabel goes to the Browns, you're probably not going to see him next year. If you do, it'll be in Cleveland. Nobody wants that. 2, like the passive aggressiveness in Cleveland. Nobody cares about the Browns unless they're good, and they won't be. And then 3, just like I said, they'll stink. And if they stink, Vrabel has the built-in excuse of the Deshaun Watson contract, and it is a valid built-in excuse. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Matthew in Nashville says, Jared, you forgot about the Bears and the Giants. I could do Vrabel with the Giants. The Bears are going to go with an offensive coach. It seems to me, and again, what do I know? It seems to me like Ben Johnson is trying to bulldoze his way into that Chicago job and get personnel control. Remember, Ben Johnson was going to be the Commanders coach, and then he and Adam Peters couldn't see eye to eye. And normally that's usually over power. So I saw a report, I think it was Schefter or somebody, who came out and said that Ben Johnson may not want to go to Chicago because he may not want to deal with what they have going on internally there. And what that told me was Ben Johnson wants to be in charge. And maybe Ben Johnson is such a good play caller and such a hot name that you got to do it for Caleb Williams' sake and put Ben in charge. But I don't know how that'll work. But again, that's their business, not mine. I think Ben Johnson ends up there. I could do the Giants. Giants I could do. One texter says, none of this will happen because if it does, then Amy won't have to pay him anymore. Vrabel doesn't care about that. Vrabel interviewed for the Charger job. Vrabel interviewed for the Panther job. Vrabel interviewed for the Falcons job. Vrabel wants to be a coach. I mean, why else would he go to Cleveland? To eat hot dogs? Like, again, Vrabel wants to be a head coach. And I'm cool with Vrabel being head coach again. I just want it to be somewhere interesting. One texter says, isn't Vrabel too intimidating? So that was that whole Diana thing that came out last year where Diana said, you know, that she talked to some league executive who said that Mike Vrabel was too big and too intimidating to be hired as head coach. I remember when that all went down. I was at the Super Bowl and everybody was talking about it. And I was like, Mike Vrabel is not too big, nor is he too intimidating. The problem with Mike Vrabel is that he's a jerk. Now, the truth is, sometimes jerks work in coaching. Bill Belichick, jerk. It worked. Phil Jackson, not a jerk. Bobby Knight, jerk. Jerks don't always win, but Urban Meyer, jerk. Vrabel's a jerk. And also, look at Vrabel's track record. Urban Meyer, Belichick in New England. You know, my heyday of football was Cowher with the Steelers. I think Cowher kind of had like a gruff demeanor on the sideline. I don't think Cowher was a jerk. And he did play for Cowher. And I believe he also played for Romeo Crennel. And I don't know Romeo very well, but I don't think he's a jerk. So again, when it comes to Vrabel and where Vrabel may go, I want it to be a big media market. And I want to see what happens. And again, I mean, Tony Grossi says that he could be the coach of the Browns tomorrow if they lose to the Steelers tonight. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. One texter says, Vrabel to the Giants, get the band back together. Bowen is already the DC. Tim Kelly is the tight ends coach, and he could be promoted to offensive coordinator. Here's what I want to know. And let me say this. If I had to pick a head coach, Vrabel or Arthur Smith, I would personally pick Arthur Smith. But for some reason, I think that Atlanta thing is going to hover over Arthur for a little bit. And I don't know what Arthur's contract situation with the Steelers is. But if Vrabel got Arthur and they had a quarterback or the opportunity to get a quarterback, they'd be good again. But if Vrabel's stuck with Downing or Kelly or one of those guys, maybe not so much. 615-737-1025. Rough road trip for the Predators. And right now it's like one baby step forward, 2 steps backwards. And we're a quarter of the way into the season. And it's kind of the same old story. Hal will join us next. And I do wonder what Hal has to say. Because I've said I'm not firing the coach. But I understand people that do think that. So we'll talk to Hal about it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and company, the long Predators road trip is over. And this was supposed to be the road trip where the Predators sequestered themselves and got themselves back close to ground level. And it didn't exactly work out that way. They got a point against Colorado. They got a point against Edmonton. They got shut out by Calgary. They got shut out by Seattle last night. And they did beat Vancouver in there. And every time they win a game like Vancouver, they then turn around and lose a game like Seattle. And the truth is, we're 25 games or we're 20 games into the season. We're basically a quarter of the way there. And this team seems to have the same problems. Cannot score 5-on-5, and the quote-unquote good players, the new players, they're not playing very well. And hockey is a fire-the-coach sport. We saw that with Boston, fired Jim Montgomery this week. I'm not saying fire Andrew Burnett because I don't believe that it is time. And when I believe it's time, I'll tell you. But I do not believe it's time. I think they're playing hard. For whatever reason, it's not clicking. But again, if you're a hockey person that thinks, got to change the coach, got to change the coach, got to change the coach, I see that side of the coin too. That's not what I believe, but I understand. And as they say, it's getting late early. Hal Gill joins us now on the program. He's fresh off the road trip. So Hal, why is it that this team seems to have a positive game against Vancouver and then follows it up with the dud last night? And why is it that the 5-on-5 game just cannot get going?
Yeah, it's frustrating. I'm trying to figure it out myself. After that first period last night, I thought for sure, like, this is a good game. They're playing the right way, defending well. Juice had to make some big saves, but that's what you expect. But they generated offensive zone pressure. They just didn't get those grade A scoring chances. They couldn't find a way to get to the interior to get that first goal. And I think if they get that first goal, the game changes. And they're just having such a hard time finding 5-on-5 scoring that can put them into a position where they set up for a good game. I feel like in Vancouver, they did so many things well. And your penalty kill does well. Your power play scores some goals. You get, the captain steps up with a big shot. Like, everything kind of fell into line, and you're saying, okay, this should be something that they can do repeatedly because they do have those players that can do that, and they've done it over their careers. But it's frustrating when it's not working out. That second period, it just got away from them. And Seattle, I'll give the Kraken credit. They came out and pushed hard, and then took over the game. And then the third period, you're thinking maybe they can push back, and they give up a goal right away on the first shift in the third period, and it's deflating. And it's back to the frustration, and it's back to, okay, nothing is going our way. And I'm having a hard time understanding it. It's a tough one. And I know for the guys too.
Well, why do these veteran acquisitions that I know don't stink because I've seen them play, why are they playing the way that they're playing right now? Is it the Burnett system? Is it the frustration of the 0-5 starts lingered on and grown? Or what is it?
It's tough to pinpoint. And I will say, you'd said it, 20 games into the season, something has to change. There's got to be, whether that's internal with internal personnel, with you're playing different players, or certain players are getting benched, or you're bringing up new blood and new life to the system, or you're changing the system in itself and the way you're doing it. Like, something needs to change because these are good players that are not playing well. And whether they have to take a game off, or someone else, you kind of have to be drastic at this point, without selling your future short. I think on paper, this team looks like they could be a good team. And so you want to hold on to that, because once they click, and you hope it was going to click on this road trip at least, and it partially did, but it's not good enough. So I think something has to change, and that's got to be between Barry Trotz and the management and the coaches, and ultimately the players. There's got to be a change somewhere.
Andrew Burnett, Hal, has always been a guy who hasn't been afraid to scratch a player. And I mean, I remember the whole Tyson Berry thing last year where he got scratched. He didn't like it. And Trotz came on the show and he said, look, I've scratched Ovechkin. So this idea that you're going to demand a trade because you got scratched does not fly with Barry Trotz. But the guys that are getting scratched right now are the Novaks, the McCarrons, the Evangelista got scratched last night. I see both sides of the coin here when it comes to the veteran players. For instance, Jonathan Marchessault had a turnover that led to the game-winning goal against Edmonton in overtime. Same with Brady Shea against Colorado. If Andrew Burnett goes to scratch that guy, a veteran guy making a lot of money who is got skins on the wall, in the case of Marchessault, a Conn Smythe, if he goes to scratch him for one night, is that different in the locker room than it would be if he scratches Tomasino, McCarron, Smith, whoever?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you got to tread lightly. You got to know what buttons to push. I think it's, as a coach, I think Brunette has tried to show faith in the internal leadership and not rock the boat so much. These guys are going to work through it, but eventually there's a point where you say, okay, this isn't going to cut it anymore, and so you got to make changes and you got to make tough decisions. But I think up to this point, I've liked the patience that he's had. Believe it, showing them what they did wrong and trying to improve and get better every day, but also at the same time believing in his guys. You don't want to lose them. It's early in the season to lose guys, and if you lose guys, then you lose everything. And so I think he's done a great job of riding that line. And okay, we need to push it, but we need to be patient. But like I said, at some point it has to change. It's a winning business, and you have a team that should win. And if they're not doing it, there's a reason why, and you got to change it.
Hal, if you were on this team, would you look at it like, okay, we got to win 2 out of the next 3 for probably the rest of the season? Or would you look at it like, hey, we got to go pull a 7-game streak off here. We got to go do something drastic, similar to last year. We got to do something to get hot, to get ourselves out of this mess. How would you look at it?
I've been on teams that have done it both ways, where a coach will come up and say, okay, this is what we need as a record. We need to win this game, that game. We need to, like you said, 2 out of 3 for the rest of the season gives us 95 points. We're in the playoffs. I've been on that team, and I've been on the other one. I think the best teams that I've been on are the ones that, like, this game matters. And not only does, this game matter, but like our power play in this game matters. Our penalty kill needs to be at this percentage in these groups of games. And like you take it one game at a time and you break down all the pieces. I think that's the only way you can do it. And as a player, even more so, I think you have to look at it as, this is my shift. My next shift is the most important, and I need to manage the game. I need to be aware of, hey, there's 1 minute left. I'm not going to try to make the extra play. There's 1 minute left in the period, or, we're down 2. This is when I need to make a play. And I think you need to look at players that can seize the moment and go at it, because then you get that confidence from that one next play, and then you build off that confidence. And we all know how it goes. Like last year, it's still fresh in their mind that, hey, we can turn this around, and we did it 1 game at a time, and we went on an 18-game heater. And that's in their mind. They know they can do that. Now they just got to go out and take that first step. But that first step should have been in Vancouver, and that's why it's frustrating. That was the first step. And they showed signs of that against the Boston Bruins. They played a great game. They need to continue that, but it hasn't clicked. And that's the frustrating part. You just have to keep hoping that each new step is going to lead to more wins.
Hal, I'm going to tell you what I think is going to happen here. And I was wrong because I thought this team was going to be good from the jump this year. So what do I know? But I think it is going to click for this team. And I think it's going to click too late. I think they're going to get hot. I think they're going to make this a very entertaining, February, March, and they're going to fall 3 points shy of a playoff spot because of how much time they've wasted. Is it when does it get to the point where you've been through these long seasons where you wasted too much early on?
I think such a hard line to find, because if you're looking on paper, we should be able to climb back in this. And if we do make it, if we do climb back into it, we have a team that could win. I think if you're looking at it as, okay, even if we, on paper, we're not that good, we're never going to be that good. I look at San Jose last year, like, how do they expect to win? They're not going to win. So even if they go on a heater and somehow make the playoffs, they're still not going to win. But I think this team, in my opinion, and I still believe that they could win in the playoffs. So I think you hold on to it a little bit longer, and let that leash go. But at the same time, you gotta push the right buttons. The hard part is finding what buttons do you want to push, and finding out when is the right time to push what button. And I think that's what Barry Trotz and Andrew Burnett have to figure out I believe in his team. We can do something, but we're not doing it right now. Can we get to a spot where we believe in it, or do we have to cut ties on it? Because I think that this team has a couple years in this window. You're looking at 3 to 4 years where this could be a good team and make an impact. They're in the wheelhouse of Staros and Yossi, and I think these guys can turn it around and play, and you're in their window, so you don't want to give up on it. But it's right now it's discouraging, and you got to do something to change the narrative and change how everything goes. So, I think we're at that point where something needs to happen.
Hal Gill, as always, joining us. Hal, thank you. We will talk soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jared. Appreciate you.
Yep, Hal Gill on our program, Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
Stamkos up high. Yossi one-timer blocked behind the net. Nyquist tries to bat it off the Cord's back. He was wise to it. Got a piece of it with his pad. Puck below the goal line. O'Reilly trying to get out of traffic with it. Yossi can't keep it alive. Yanni Gordon ahead on his left-handed backhand for the empty net. And he got it. 3-0 Kraken with 2:43 to go.
That was last night for the Predators. And I will say, this season has underwhelmed in almost every way possible. This season has been completely unacceptable. And it's like Hal kept saying, something's got to change, something's got to change. And I don't think Hal means the coach, but we shall see what comes of this road trip and the fact that it wasn't what they wanted. It wasn't what they were hoping for, and what that means for the future of the team. Because while they're going to work at this together, they're not going to work at this together forever. Then they're going to figure something out. Vandy basketball is next. Stillman and Company. We'll see everybody tomorrow at 2.